Hello everyone, and welcome to the DXD Tales. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Issei was the son of the dragon of infinity and the goddess of chaos. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Convergence of Infinity. Ray. Liddy fractured around Issei Hyodo as he stared at the 18 obsidian candles arranged in perfect symmetry atop the floating crystal altar. Each flame burned with a different color, ultraviolet, infrared, and several hues that existed beyond human perception. The dimensional pocket where he'd spent most of his life shuddered as another power surge radiated from his body, causing ripples in the fabric of space-time. "Control your breathing," came the monotone voice of his mother. "Your consciousness exists at the intersection of infinity and chaos. Find the void within you." Ophis stood motionless, her form a slender silhouette against the backdrop of swirling cosmic energies. Neither fully woman nor fully dragon, she existed as something else entirely, the embodiment of the infinite, the Ouroboros dragon. A primordial being whose power was matched only by Great Red himself. Her obsidian eyes betrayed no emotion as she watched her son struggle. "I'm trying," Issei managed through gritted teeth. Another surge of power escaped him, this one causing several books to levitate from their shelves, their pages flipping wildly. "It's different today, like something's broken open inside me." 18 years. 18 years of rigorous training, meditation, and isolation. 18 years of learning to contain the impossible contradictions of his existence. The son of infinity and chaos, a being who, by all cosmic laws, should not exist. Ophis moved toward him with liquid grace, her bare feet making no sound against the crystalline floor. "Your father's essence grows stronger in you with each passing year. Today, you cross the threshold." She placed a pale hand on his shoulder, and instantly, the churning maelstrom of energy within him calmed slightly. The convergence was always going to be painful. Issei closed his eyes, focusing on the techniques she'd taught him since childhood. He visualized the infinite void that was his mother's legacy, using it to create space AR. Owned the chaotic energies he'd inherited from his father. It was like trying to contain a supernova within a black hole, two forces that should annihilate each other instead creating a precarious balance. Who was he really? Issei asked, opening his eyes to find the dimensional distortions had temporarily subsided. It was the question he'd asked countless times throughout his life, always receiving fragments of answers but never the complete truth. Ophis's expression remained unreadable. Tiamat was many things. The chaos karma dragon to some. To older pantheons, the goddess of primordial chaos. To me, she paused, and for a fleeting moment, something almost like emotion flickered across her ageless features. A contradiction, as was our union, and his destruction. "You've never told me exactly how it happened. Some knowledge is better acquired when you are ready to bear its weight." Ophis turned away, her long black hair floating unnaturally around her as if suspended in water. "Tonight, you will complete the ritual of convergence. Your powers will stabilize, and you will be able to move freely through the realms without detection." Another surge of power erupted from Issei, stronger than before, causing fracture lines to appear in the dimensional barriers. Ophis frowned, an expression so rare that Issei immediately tensed. "Something is wrong," she stated flatly. "Why? Our energies should not be manifesting this way." Issei grimaced as pain shot through his body. It felt as if his very cells were trying to exist in multiple states simultaneously. "What's happening to me?" Before Ophis could answer, a thunderous crack echoed through their sanctuary as a perfect circular hole appeared in the center of the dimensional pocket. Through it, Issei glimpsed blue sky, human world, a realm he'd visited only under his mother's strictest supervision and always with multiple layers of power suppression. "Impossible," Ophis whispered, the single word carrying more ocean than Issei had heard from her in years. "The barriers are absolute." A figure dropped through the opening, a young woman dressed in the red and white garments of a shrine maiden. She landed in a crouch, one hand already forming a complex sigil that pulsed with spiritual energy. Her long raven hair was tied in a high ponytail, and her sharp violet eyes immediately fixed on Issei with a mixture of wariness and awe. "Dragon of Infinity," she addressed Ophis, never taking her eyes off Issei. "I am Sora Himahima of the Balance Keepers. We detected a critical disruption in the cosmic equilibrium centered on this location. Her voice was clear and authoritative despite her youth, which seemed close to Issei's own. The convergence is happening incorrectly. The seals are failing. Ophis moved with blinding speed, positioning herself between the intruder and her son. The Himahima clan has no authority here, Balance Keeper. This convergence is a natural process. With respect, Dragon God, it is not. Sora finally shifted her gaze to Ophis. The energies are not stabilizing, they're cascading. Every supernatural faction with basic sensory capabilities will have detected it by now. She gestured toward Issei. His existence is no longer hidden. The implications hit Issei like a physical blow. All his life, his mother had emphasized the absolute necessity of secrecy. The child of two primordial beings, carrying within him the potential to upset the balance of every pantheon and supernatural hierarchy, his very existence was considered an existential threat by many. "How much time do we have?" he asked, forcing himself to think strategically despite the pain still coursing through him. Sora's expression remained stern, but something like respect flickered in her eyes at his practical question. "Minutes, perhaps. My family erected temporary concealment barriers as soon as we detected the disruption, but they won't hold against determined forces." Another surge of power radiated from Issei. This one strong enough to cause Sora to stagger slightly. The dimensional pocket shuddered, its boundaries fluctuating wildly. "The convergence must be completed," Ophis stated, turning to the altar with its 18 candles. "But not here. We are compromised." "I know a place," Sora offered quickly. "A nexus point within Himahima territory. It's designed to contain and channel excessive spiritual energy." Issei saw his mother's hesitation. Ophis trusted no one outside of herself, and rarely revealed her true intentions even to him. For her to consider placing his soft Eddie in the hands of the Himahima clan would be unprecedented. "Mother," he said quietly, "we don't have many options." Before Ophis could respond, multiple rifts tore open around them, jagged tears eye. Reality revealing glimpses of different realms. From one emerged the crimson magic circles of devil teleportation, from another, the golden light of heaven, from a third, the elemental distortion characteristic of yokai territory. "They're here already," Sora whispered, her hands quickly forming protective seals. Ophis moved with fluid grace, her form briefly shifting to something less human. Waves of infinite power rolled off her. "Issei," she commanded, "enact protocol Ouroboros." Issei nodded grimly. They had prepared for this possibility since he was a child, the contingency plan if their sanctuary was ever breached. With practiced movements, he pressed his palm against a specific point in space, channeling his unique energy signature into it. Instantly, the dimensional pocket began to collapse in on itself. Designed to implode rather than allow invaders to capture its secrets. Figures began materializing through the rifts, devils in ornate battle attire, angels with weapons of light, yokai in their true forms. Issei counted at least 3 distinct factions, all converging on their position simultaneously. "The son of Ophis," announced a tall devil with aristocratic features, his crimson eyes gleaming with triumph. The rumors were true. A blasphemous existence, countered an angel, her multiple wings spreading wide as golden light concentrated around her spear. "A threat to the great balance." Sora stepped forward, her stance shifting to a traditional combat position. "He is under the protection of the Himahima Balance Keepers. Stand down." The yokai, a 9-tailed fox in humanoid form, laughed. Her voice melodic yet menacing. "The Balance Keepers have no authority when primordial forces are involved. The offspring must be contained or destroyed before it fully awakens." Issei felt a cold clarity descend over him as he analyzed the situation. 3 major factions, possibly more on the way. The dimensional pocket collapsing around them. His powers unstable and his mother, while incredibly powerful, would be focused on protecting him rather than fighting optimally. "Mother," he said softly, "you need to go." Ophis turned to him, genuine surprise visible on her features for perhaps the first time in his life. "Explain." "They expected you to be here. They're prepared for you specifically." Issei nodded toward the angel, whose light weapon was emitting a specific frequency designed to counter infinite energy. "If we separate, they'll have to divide their forces. I'll go with Sora to the Himahima Nexus and complete the convergence. You can draw the more powerful enemies away." Sora looked at him with new appraisal, clearly not expecting this strategic assessment from someone she'd just met. He's right. They brought specific countermeasures for the Dragon of Infinity. But they're less prepared for him. They don't know his full capabilities yet. The invaders were advancing now, forming a containment pattern that confirmed Issei's theory. Their primary focus was on restricting Ophus's movement while secondary teams moved to capture him. Ophus was still for a moment, then nodded almost imperceptibly. The Himahima clan will answer to me if any harm comes to him. The threat in her voice was unmistakable, causing Sora to swallow nervously. I understand, the Shrine Maiden responded solemnly. Without further warning, Ophus shifted fully into her draconic aspect, not the immense serpent of legend, but a concentrated form of pure void energy that defied visual comprehension. She surged toward the largest concentration of invaders, creating a chaotic distraction as reality itself seemed to bend around her. Now, Sora grabbed Issei's wrist, pulling him toward a small rift she quickly formed with a complex hand gesture. This leads directly to the Himahima Sanctuary. As they moved, a devil lieutenant broke from the main group, launching a barrage of energy spears toward them. Issei, despite his fluctuating powers, reacted instinctively. He didn't try to access the chaotic energy swirling within him, that would only worsen the dimensional instability. Instead, he drew on his mother's teachings, creating a small pocket of void that simply absorbed the incoming attack. Sora's eyes widened slightly at the casual display of power. Impressive control for someone in convergence flux. 18 years of practice, Issei replied grimly as they reached the rift. Though today seems determined to test those limits. They leapt through just as the dimensional pocket began its final collapse, the implosion NCE creating a vacuum that would destroy all evidence of their long-term habitation. As the rift sealed behind them, Issei caught a final glimpse of Ophus in battle, a sight few beings had witnessed and survived. Then they were somewhere else entirely, a traditional Japanese shrine complex nestled within a forest of ancient trees. The air hummed with spiritual energy, carefully maintained barriers, visible as faint iridescent patterns overlapping in complex geometric formations. Welcome to the inner sanctuary of the Himahima clan, Sora said, finally releasing his wrist. One of the few places on Earth hidden from all supernatural factions, including the biblical god himself. Issei took a moment to steady himself, the convergence energies still causing waves of pain to course through his body. How did you find us? My mother's dimensional pockets are supposed to be undetectable. Sora hesitated, then reached into her robes to produce a small orb that glowed with a familiar energy. This is why I specifically was sent. The Balance Keepers have been monitoring you since your birth, Issei Hyodo. How do you know that name? Issei demanded, suddenly alert. His human identity was one of his mother's most closely guarded secrets. Because we helped create it. Sora held his gaze steadily. The Himahima clan has served as intermediaries between cosmic forces for millennia. When Ophus conceived a child with Tiamat, it was our ancestors who negotiated the terms of your existence with the major factions. Before Issei could process this revelation, a tremor ran through the sanctuary, causing the spiritual barriers to flicker momentarily. They're following us already, Sora muttered, looking concerned. The barriers should have prevented detection. Issei grimaced as another surge of power escaped him, causing several nearby stone lanterns to crack. It's me. My convergence is acting as a beacon. He looked at Sora intently. You mentioned a nexus point that could help stabilize the process. She nodded, already moving toward the center of the complex. This way, the inner sanctum was built upon a natural convergence of ley lines. It's where we conduct our most powerful rituals. Issei followed her through the shrine complex, noting the ancient architecture seamlessly blended with subtle magical enhancements. Everything about the place spoke of tradition, mixed with pragmatic adaptation, much like the Shrine Maiden herself. They passed through a series of torii gates, each one resonating with different spiritual frequencies that Issei could perceive with his heightened senses. With each passage, he felt the chaotic energies within him shift slightly, becoming marginally more stable. The gates are calibrating to your energy signature, Sora explained, noticing his reaction. They're designed to harmonize discordant spiritual forces. The inner sanctum lay at the heart of the complex, a perfect circular chamber with a dome ceiling painted with Astronomical configurations so accurate that Issei recognized constellations from realms beyond the human world. At the center stood a raised platform of white stone, inscribed with symbols from dozens of different magical traditions. "This might help," Sora said, gesturing to the platform. "It's designed to channel and distribute excessive spiritual energy while maintaining the integrity of the vessel," Issei finished. Recognizing the complex runic formulations. Advanced work. Far beyond standard human magical capability. Sora raised an eyebrow. "The Himahima aren't standard humans. We've been spirit intercessors since before recorded history." She began moving around the chamber, activating various talismans embedded in the walls. "This will help contain your convergence energy and prevent further detection." As Issei stepped onto the platform, he felt an immediate response. The stone seemed to resonate with his unique energy signature, drawing the excess power from him and distributing it through the ley lines below. The relief was palpable, allowing him to think more clearly. "How much do you know about me?" he asked, watching as Sora worked methodically around the chamber. "That you're unprecedented," she replied without looking up from her work. "The child of two primordial beings who should, by all cosmic laws, be fundamentally incompatible. Infinity and chaos, container and contained. Your existence represents either a catastrophic breakdown of universal constants or what?" She finally turned to face him, her expression solemn. "Or the next evolutionary step in cosmic order. The balance keepers are divided on which interpretation is correct." "And what do you believe?" Issei asked, studying her carefully. Before she could answer, a deafening G-crack echoed through the chamber as a portion of the wall exploded inward. Through the debris stepped a tall figure in ornate silver armor, wings of pure light extending from his back, not the feathered wings of an angel, but crystalline structures that refracted light in hypnotic patterns. "Exalted Seeker," Sora gasped, instinctively stepping back. "Balance Keeper," the figure acknowledged, high-s voice resonating with otherworldly harmonics. "You harbor an abomination against the cosmic order. Stand aside." Issei recognized the being's classification from his mother's teachings, a hunter from the Equilibrium Council. A group so secretive that most supernatural factions believed them to be myth rather than reality. They existed outside the standard cosmology, dedicated to maintaining what they considered the proper balance of primordial forces. "The convergence is a natural process," Sora argued, placing herself between Issei and the intruder. "The balance keepers have authority here. Your authority extends only to maintaining equilibrium within established parameters," the Exalted Seeker responded coolly. "This being represents a fundamental violation of those parameters." He pointed a crystalline blade toward Issei. "He must be contained until the council determines his appropriate disposition." More figures began to materialize through the breach in the wall, lesser hunters in similar but less elaborate armor. Issei counted 6 in total, each carrying weapons designed to counter specific types of supernatural energy. Sora began forming a complex seal with her hands, spiritual energy gathering around her. "Issei, continue the convergence process. I'll hold them off." Issei assessed the situation with calculating precision. The Exalted Seeker was beyond Sora's ability to defeat, possibly beyond his own current capabilities while his powers were in flux. The sanctuary's defenses were compromised, and the platform was only providing temporary stability. Strategic options flashed through his mind, discarded almost as quickly as they formed. Direct confrontation. Suicidal. Escape. Unlikely given the hunter's tracking abilities. Surrender. Unacceptable given what he knew of the council's containment methods. That left only one viable option. "Sora," he said calmly, "on my signal, activate the Sanctum's purification protocol." Her eyes widened in alarm. "That's designed for cleansing yokai corruption, not. Trust me." Something in his tone must have convinced her, as she gave a small nod while maintaining her defensive stance. Issei closed his eyes, focusing not on controlling his power, which was currently impossible, but on directing it with precision. He had never attempted what he was about to do, but the theoretical framework was sound. Based on years of his mother's teachings, the Exalted Seeker advanced, his blade humming with energy specifically calibrated to disrupt draconic power. "Your mother cannot save you, hybrid. The Dragon of Infinity is currently engaged with our primary containment team. I don't need saving," Issei responded, opening his eyes. Now, Sora. The shrine maiden slapped her palm against a concealed panel on the wall. Instantly, pillars of purifying spiritual energy erupted from the cardinal points of the chamber, designed to forcibly expel malevolent supernatural energies. But instead of fighting against this purification, Issei embraced it. He channeled his chaotic energy, the legacy of Tiamat, directly into the spiritual pillars, causing them to change from pure white to a swirling vortex of colors. Simultaneously, he created a small void pocket, his inheritance from Ophis, and positioned it precisely at the convergence point of the purification energies. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The purification system, never designed to handle primordial energies, overloaded spectacularly. The resulting explosion of power was contained and redirected by Issei's void pocket, critiquing a focused blast wave that struck the equilibrium hunters with devastating precision while leaving Sora and the chamber structure untouched. The lesser hunters were thrown backward, their specialized armor cracking under the strain. The exalted seeker remained standing, though his crystalline wings now showed fracture lines, and his armor had lost its luster. Impossible, the hunter hissed. Quote, no convergent being should have such control. Issei stepped down from the platform, power now visibly crackling around his form. The momentary stability provided by the nexus point had given him enough control to execute his strategy. You made two critical mistakes, he said calmly. You assumed I was in the middle of my first convergence, and you believed I was unaware of your council's existence. The exalted seeker's eyes narrowed behind his helmet. Ophis has taught you well, abomination. Better than you know. Issei gestured to Sora. The secondary containment measures. She nodded, impressed by his insight, and quickly moved to a different control panel, activating a series of binding seals that materialized around the fallen hunters. The exalted seeker remained defiant, even as the bindings began to restrict his movements. This changes nothing. The council has decreed your existence an unacceptable risk. Even now, our Grand Masters are extracting the truth from the Dragon of Infinity. Issei felt a cold dread at these words. What do you mean, extracting the truth? About your true purpose. About why Tiamat allowed himself to be imprisoned rather than destroyed. The hunter's voice carried a cruel satisfaction. Did you really believe your father was gone? How naive. The Chaos Karma Dragon merely waits, imprisoned by the council since before your birth. The revelation hit Issei like a physical blow. All his life, he had been told that his father had been destroyed in a conflict with rival primordial beings, a necessary sacrifice to protect his existence. The possibility that Tiamat still lived, imprisoned somewhere by the very council now hunting him, recontextualized everything he thought he knew. You're lying, Sora interjected, seeing Issei's shock. Tiamat's destruction is documented in the ancient records. Records written by victors to conceal truths, the seeker countered. Ask your elders about the primordial containment protocols, Balance Keeper. Ask them what truly lies beneath the 7 seals of cosmic equilibrium. Before either could respond, another explosion rocked the sanctuary, this one from the opposite direction of the initial breach. Through this new opening poured a contingent of devils, led by a striking woman with silver hair and calculating eyes. Secure the hybrid, she commanded her forces. Lord Valifor demands his presence. Sora cursed under her breath. Devils of the old blood. They must have tracked us through the dimensional disturbance. Issei's mind raced. His power was still unstable, the convergence incomplete. He couldn't fight effectively while managing the fluctuations, and now he faced threats from multiple fronts. Sora, he said quietly, is there another nexus point we can reach? Somewhere to complete the convergence. She nodded slightly. The mountain shrine, 2 kilometers north. It's smaller but connected to the same ley line network. She glanced at the advancing devils. Then at the partially contained equilibrium hunters. But we'll never reach it with both groups in pursuit. Issei made a rapid decision. We need to divide them. The council and the devils are adversaries, we can use that. As if on cue, the devil commander noticed the equilibrium hunters. Her expression shifted from triumph to cold fury. Equilibrium Council, she spat. This is devil territory by ancient compact. Your presence violates 17 different treaties. The exalted seeker, still partially bound, turned his attention to the newcomers. The compact of non-interference is. superseded by primordial containment protocols. Stand down, devil, or face extinction. The tension between the two groups was palpable, centuries of mutual hatred and suspicion creating a perfect opportunity. Issei seized the moment, focusing on creating a small, controlled void disruption directly between the two factions. The ripple of infinite energy was subtle but precisely calibrated to trigger the devil's defensive wards and the hunter's detection systems simultaneously. The effect was immediate. Each group believed they were being attacked by the other, and chaos erupted as they engaged at each other instead of pursuing their original objective. Now, Issei grabbed Sora's hand and pulled her toward a side passage that had remained intact during the fighting. Which way to the mountain shrine? Through the eastern forest path, she replied, matching his pace as they fled the sanctum. But they'll pursue us once they realize we're gone. Not if they can't track us. Issei concentrated on suppressing his energy signature using techniques Ophis had drilled into him since childhood. It wasn't perfect, not during convergence, but it would confuse pursuit long enough to gain distance. They emerged from the shrine complex into an ancient forest, sunlight filtering through dense foliage. Sora immediately veered onto a narrow path nearly invisible among the underbrush, moving with the surety of someone who had traveled it countless times. The mountain shrine is our most sacred site, she explained as they moved swiftly through the forest. It's where the first Himahima made contact with the spiritual realm and established our clan's role as balance keepers. Issei followed, focusing on maintaining his energy suppression while processing the revelations of the past hour. The Equilibrium Hunter claimed my father is still alive. Imprisoned, not destroyed. Sora's pace faltered slightly. I don't know. The records are clear about Tiamat's fate, but those records are restricted even within my clan. Only the elders have full access. And what about your clan's role in creating my human identity? Why would the Himahima involve themselves in hiding the child of two primordial beings? She glanced back at him, her expression complicated. The balance keepers serve neither heaven nor hell, neither gods nor demons. Our purpose is maintaining equilibrium between all supernatural forces. She paused before adding, sometimes that means protecting what others would destroy out of fear. Before Issei could press further, a massive energy signature bloomed. Behind them, the unmistakable power of a high-ranking devil unleashing their full potential. Moments later, trees began toppling in their wake as pursuit closed in. They're tracking your convergence energy, Sora said grimly. It's becoming more unstable the longer we delay completion. She was right. Issei could feel the chaotic energies within him building toward another uncontrolled release. The temporary stability gained from the sanctuary's nexus point was fading rapidly. How much further to the mountain shrine? He asked, calculating their odds. At this pace, 10 minutes. But we don't have 10 minutes. Issei made a swift decision. Then we make our stand here. He stopped in a small clearing, turning to face the direction of pursuit. Your clan has barriers and protections throughout these woods, correct? Sora nodded, already understanding his intent. Defensive talismans at 50-meter intervals. They're not as powerful as the sanctuary's systems, but they don't need to be powerful. They just need to be adaptable. Issei began channeling his energy in a new pattern, focusing on precision rather than power. I need you to activate every talisman within range simultaneously. That's not how they're designed to function, she protested. Activating them all at once will cause them to burn out within seconds. Exactly. Issei gave her a meaningful look. Seconds is all we need. Understanding dawned in her eyes, and she quickly produced a small ritual dagger from within her robes. With a swift motion, she cut her palm and pressed the bloodied hand against the nearest tree. Blood of the keepers, awaken the wards, she intoned, her voice carrying subtle harmonics of power. Instantly, hundreds of talismans hidden throughout the forest began to glow with spiritual energy. The network of power became visible to Issei's enhanced perception, a complex web of interconnected spiritual pathways designed to repel malevolent entities. As their pursuers drew closer, the silver-haired devil commander now visible through the trees, leading a contingent of battle-ready subordinates, Issei enacted the second phase of his plan. He channeled a precise amount of his chaotic energy into the talisman network, causing the entire system to flare with unprecedented power. The devil commander halted, raising a barrier as the forest around them erupted with spiritual light. A himahima trap, she snarled. Clever, but insufficient. What she failed to realize was that Issei wasn't trying to attack them directly. Instead, he was using the talisman network as a massive energy conductor, creating a localized version of the convergence ritual. As the talismans burned out in sequence, just as Sora had predicted, they released their energy in a specific pattern that resonated with Issei's dual nature. The effect was not what the devils expected. Instead of an offensive blast, the forest between them and their quarry suddenly shifted, reality itself becoming temporarily malleable as Issei's convergence energy interacted with the spiritual pathways. What is this? The devil commander demanded as the trees and undergrowth began to warp, creating an ever-shifting labyrinth that separated her forces from their targets. A dimensional fold, Issei explained to Sora, who was watching the phenomenon with wide-eyed fascination. Temporary, but effective. I've created a localized distortion that will keep reconfiguring itself for several minutes. That's not something a being in convergence flux should be capable of, she said, clearly reassessing him yet again. My mother is the dragon of infinity, Issei replied simply. Manipulating dimensional boundaries is literally in my blood. He grimaced as another wave of convergence pain hit him. But it's not sustainable. We need to reach the mountain shrine before this collapses. They resumed their journey, moving faster now that immediate pursuit was temporarily thwarted. The forest grew denser as they ascended, ancient trees giving way to gnarled pines that seemed to watch their passage with sentient awareness. The spirits here are old, Issei observed, sensing the supernatural senses woven throughout the natural environment. Sora nodded. The himahima have tended this mountain for 15 generations. The spirits recognize us as their caretakers. She glanced at him curiously. They're reacting strangely to your presence, neither hostile nor welcoming. It's as if they can't quite categorize what you are. Story of my life, Issei muttered. They crested a ridge and mountain shrine came into view, far more modest than the main sanctuary, consisting of a single wooden structure built around a massive boulder that emanated subtle spiritual energy. Unlike the Alabo, Rate protective systems of the main complex, this shrine's power lay in its simplicity and connection to the natural energy of the mountain itself. The founder's stone, Sora explained, gesturing to the boulder. A natural convergence point where human spirituality and supernatural energy intersect. As they approached the shrine, Issei felt an immediate resonance with the stone, his chaotic RGIES responding to its stabilizing influence. This was exactly what he needed to complete the convergence process. But before they could reach it, a shimmering distortion appeared in the air before them, resolving into the form of the exalted seeker. His armor was damaged from the earlier confrontation, but his crystalline blade glowed with renewed power. Persistent, Issei noted calmly, Thog. Internally he was calculating their diminishing options. The council does not abandon its quarry, the hunter replied. Your dimensional distraction was impressive, hybrid, but ultimately futile. We have tracked convergence events across multiple realities for millennia. Sora moved into a combat stance, spiritual energy gathering around her hands. He is under Himahima protection by ancient right. Your council recognized our authority in the Eastern Accords. The Accords apply to beings within established taxonomies. The Seeker's voice was cold. This abomination represents a category violation, a fundamental disruption to cosmic order itself. More hunters began to materialize around them, forming a containment circle. Issei noted that they were not the same individuals from the earlier confrontation. The council had committed additional resources to his capture. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Issei's convergence energy was approaching critical instability, and now, their path to the one thing that could help stabilize it was blocked. Fighting through the hunters in his current state would be nearly impossible. Then, a new presence made itself known, a crushing avenue of infinite power that caused even the equilibrium hunters to falter. Reality seemed to fold in on itself as Ophis materialized beside her son, her human form showing signs of recent conflict but her power undiminished. You exceed your mandate, Equilibrium Council, she stated, her voice devoid of emotion yet somehow resonating with primordial authority. The convergence will proceed as cosmic law demands. The exalted seeker held his ground despite the palpable fear emanating from his subordinates. Dragon God, your offspring represents an existential threat to established order. The council has ruled. Your council exists because I allow it, Ophis replied simply. Do not mistake my historical non-interference for inability to act. The standoff crackled with tension, neither I'd willing to initiate what would surely be a catastrophic conflict. Issei, meanwhile, felt his control slipping further as another wave of convergence energy built within him. Mother, he said quietly, the shrine. I need to complete the process now. Ophis nodded almost imperceptibly, then addressed the seeker once more. You will permit the convergence ritual. In exchange, I will provide our council with information they have long sought regarding the dimensional regression event of the third epoch. The hunter's posture shifted subtly. Surprise, Issei realized. Whatever this dimensional regression event was, it clearly represented valuable intelligence to the council. The council requires guarantees, the seeker countered. You are not in a position to negotiate terms, Ophis stated flatly. But I will permit one observer to monitor the convergence from a safe distance. After a moment's consideration, the exalted seeker stepped aside, motioning for his subordinates to create an opening in their containment circle. One observer, and the hybrid remains under council surveillance indefinitely. We will discuss terms after the convergence is complete, Ophis replied. Which Issei recognized as neither acceptance nor rejection of the condition. With the path now clear, they approached the shrine and the ancient stone at its center. Issei could feel the convergence. Energy within him responding to the natural power of the site, the chaotic fluctuations beginning to find rhythm and pattern rather than random discharge. What now? Sora asked, looking between Ophis and Issei. Now he completes what was begun 18 years ago, Ophis answered. She turned to her son, and for a brief moment, Issei thought he detected something almost like concern in her usually impassive features. The process will be painful, but necessary. Your dual nature must find harmony, not merely coexistence. Issei nodded, steeling himself as he placed his hands on the founder's stone. Immediately, energy began to flow between them, the stone's stabilizing influence creating a framework for his chaotic power to organize itself around. Ophis moved to stand behind him, placing her pale hands on his shoulders. I will guide the infinite aspect while you focus on controlling the chaos. The process began gradually, then accelerated as the natural energy of the mountain shrine interacted with their combined power. Issei felt as if he were being simultaneously compressed into a single point and expanded across multiple dimensions, a paradoxical sensation that would have driven a normal being to madness. But he was not normal. He was the son of infinity and chaos, and this contradictory existence was his birthright. As the convergence intensified, visions flashed through his mind, fragments of cosmic memory not his own. He saw his mother as she truly was, the Ouroboros dragon, infinite and eternal. He glimpsed his father, Tiamat, not destroyed as he had been told be. Contained within an elaborate prison of crystalline geometry that transcended normal space-time. He's alive, Issei gasped through the pain. Father is alive. Ophis's grip on his shoulders tightened slightly. Focus on the convergence, Issei. Those visions are echoes of possibility, not necessarily truth. But Issei knew what he had seen. The equilibrium hunter had not been lying. His father was imprisoned, not destroyed. The realization sent a surge of chaotic energy through him, momentarily disrupting the convergence process. Control, Ophis commanded sharply. Your emotions feed the chaos. Issei forced himself to regain focus, channeling the emotional turbulence into the structured framework the Founder's Stone provided. The convergence resumed its progression, power flowing through and around him in increasingly complex patterns. Sora watched from a respectful distance, her expression a mixture of awe and apprehension. The exalted seeker and his chosen observer remained at the perimeter, monitoring with analytical detachment. As the convergence approached its climax, Issei felt something fundamental shifting within him, the opposing forces of infinity and chaos no longer fighting for dominance but finding a new equilibrium, a synthesis that was greater than the sum of its parts. The final surge of power was blinding, a release of energy so intense that it rarely disrupted the local fabric of reality. For a brief moment, the shrine, the mountain, and everyone present existed in multiple states simultaneously, a glimpse into the true nature of Issei's power. Then reality reasserted itself. And Issei stood transformed. The physical changes were subtle, his eyes now holding an otherworldly depth, his presence carrying a gravity that seemed to bend attention toward him naturally. But the internal change was profound. The chaotic energy that had threatened to tear him apart now flowed in controlled currents throughout his being, contained within the infinite framework of his mother's legacy. "It is done," Ophis stated, removing her hands from his shoulders. "The convergence is complete." Issei took a deep breath, testing his new equilibrium. The power that had been so volatile now responded to his will with precision, neither the pure void of Ophis nor the raw chaos of Tiamat, but something uniquely his own. The exalted seeker stepped forward, his crystalline sensors analyzing Issei's transformed energy signature. "The containment appears stable," he acknowledged reluctantly. "But the council will require ongoing verification." Before anyone could respond, a new disturbance rippled through the area, not the dimensional breach of teleportation but something more fundamental, as if reality itself were being rewritten around them. Igur appeared at the edge of the shrine clearing, a woman of striking beauty with features that seemed to shift subtly from moment to moment, never quite settling on a single appearance. Her presence carried an aura of beautiful destruction, of creation and annihilation existing as two aspects of the same force. "My son," she said, her voice containing harmonics that resonated with the chaotic aspect of Issei's newly stabilized power. At last, Ophis moved with blinding speed to position herself between Issei and the newcomer. "Impossible," she stated, genuine surprise evident in her voice. "The seals were designed to contain Tiamat," the woman replied with a smile that contained both warmth and terrible promise. "I am not Tiamat, though I wear aspects of what once was." The Ekili Briam hunters immediately formed a battle formation, their weapons trained on the apparition. The exalted seeker's voice shook slightly as he declared, "Primordial breach detected. Enacting containment protocol Omega." But the woman merely laughed, the sound causing flowers to bloom and wither in rapid succession around her feet. "Your protocols are meaningless, little keeper of a false balance. I am beyond your taxonomies." Issei stared at the woman, feeling a profound recognition that transcended memory or logic. "Mother," he said, though he was not addressing Ophis. "You're really alive, not as you understand life, my child," she replied. "But yes, I exist. I have always existed, though in forms and states beyond comprehension." Ophis remained tense, her power gathering around her. "Explain yourself, Chaos Karma." "The Equilibrium Council reported your containment is absolute." "The Council sees what it wishes to see," the woman replied. Tiamat allowed the masculine aspect of chaos to be contained because it served a purpose, to conceal the creation of something new. Her shifting gaze fixed on Issei. "A perfect synthesis. Our child." The implications were staggering, not just that his father lived, but that what he had known as father was merely one aspect of a more complex being, one who had apparently orchestrated its own partial containment as part of a larger plan. "Why reveal yourself now?" Issei asked, his mind racing to process this paradigm-shifting revelation. "Because the convergence is complete," she answered simply. "Because now you can understand Roots that would have destroyed you before. Because the Equilibrium Council grows too bold in its manipulations of cosmic forces." She turned her mercurial gaze to the exalted seeker. "They believe they have contained Tiamat. Yet here I stand. What does that tell you about their understanding of primordial chaos?" The hunter remained silent, clearly reassessing the situation in light of this unexpected development. Sora, who had been watching the exchange with wide-eyed astonishment, finally spoke. "The ancient texts, they always referred to Tiamat with ambiguity. Neither solely masculine nor feminine. Neither holy creator nor destroyer. Your ancestors understood better than most," the chaos goddess acknowledged. "They recognized that primordial forces transcend the limited categories lesser beings impose upon them." Ophis had not relaxed her defensive stance, but her expression suggested calculation rather than hostility. "What is your purpose here, Chaos Karma?" "Our agreement." She was specific. "The child would remain under my guardianship until convergence." "And so he has," came the reply. "You have fulfilled your part admirably, Ouroboros. But the game has changed. The Equilibrium Council's actions have accelerated events beyond their intended timeline." She turned her attention back to Issei. "You saw him, didn't you?" During the convergence, you saw the prison. Issei nodded slowly. I saw a crystalline structure, complex geometries containing something vast. The masculine aspect of Tiamat, she confirmed, willingly bound to maintain the fiction of destruction, while I remained free to move between the realms. Her expression grew solemn, but the council grows dissatisfied with containment. They now seek to extract power from what they have imprisoned, a dangerous gambit that threatens multiple dimensions. The exalted seeker finally broke his silence. These are matters beyond your concern, hybrid. The council's methods are short-sighted and potentially catastrophic. The chaos goddess interrupted. You believe you are maintaining balance, but you are instead creating the very instability you fear. She fixed the hunter with a stare that seemed to pierce through his armor. Tell your masters that Tiamat's imprisonment was a gift, freely given for purposes beyond their understanding. If they attempt to extract or weaponize that power, He will discover too late the true nature of what they contain. The warning hung in the air, carrying the weight of primordial authority. Even the exalted seeker, representative of one of the most powerful organizations in existence, seemed momentarily cowed. Issei watched this exchange with growing understanding. The convergence had not just stabilized his powers, it had expanded his perception, allowing him to grasp cosmic complexities that would have been beyond him hours ago. You need me, he said, addressing both his mothers. Whatever is happening with the council and father's imprisonment, you need me to help resolve it. Quote, Ophis and the chaos goddess exchanged a look that contained volumes of unspoken communication. Yes, the chaos goddess finally acknowledged. Your unique nature makes you the only being capable of safely interacting with both the prison and its occupant. You are the key, the reason for your very creation. The revelation should have been disturbing, to Arn, that his existence had been planned for a specific cosmic purpose. Yet Issei found himself oddly at peace with the concept. His entire life had been preparation for something greater than himself. Why should his very conception be any different? The council will not permit interference with the primordial containment protocols, the exalted seeker warned, though his confidence seemed diminished. Head in the face of not one but two primordial beings. The council will adapt or it will become irrelevant, Ophis stated with characteristic bluntness. The chaos goddess smiled, an expression somehow both beautiful and terrifying. The council has served its purpose, as have we all. Now a new phase begins. She extended her hand toward Issei. Come, my son, it's time you learned the full truth of your heritage and purpose. Issei looked between his two mothers, one the embodiment of infinite nothing, the other the essence of creative chaos. Then he glanced at Sora, who had been thrust into this cosmic drama by chance or fate. What about the Himahima clan? He asked. They've protected me since birth, apparently. Do they have a role in whatever comes next? The chaos goddess's expressio softened slightly as she regarded Sora. The balance keepers have always understood more than they reveal. They will be needed in the coming transition. Transition to what? Sora asked, finding her voice despite the overwhelming power surrounding her. To a new equilibrium, came the cryptic reply. One that accommodates forces previously deemed incompatible. Issei made his decision. With newfound confidence in his stabilized powers, he stepped forward to stand between his mothers, facing the equilibrium hunter. Tell your council that we will be coming. Not as enemies, but not as supplicants either. The imprisonment of Tiamat must be addressed before it creates the very catastrophe you seek to prevent. The exalted seeker's posture suggested conflict, but wisdom prevailed. Against T2 primordial beings and their now convergent offspring, further resistance would be futile. I will convey your message, he said stiffly, before he and his observer vanished in a flash of crystalline light. They will prepare defenses, Ophis noted dispassionately. Let them, the chaos goddess replied with amused confidence. It will change nothing. Issei turned to Sora, who stood watching with an expression that mixed awe, confusion, and determination. Will you come with us? He asked, as representative of the balance keepers. She hesitated only briefly before nodding. My clan has maintained the balance between cosmic forces for generations. If that balance is truly changing, we should bear witness. The chaos goddess smiled approvingly. Wisdom beyond your years, Himahima. Your ancestors would be proud. As the four prepared to depart, to where, Issei wasn't yet certain, he took a final look at the mountain shrine where his convergence had completed. In the span of a single day, everything he thought he knew about himself and his place in the cosmos had been transformed. His father lived, though in a state more complex than simple imprisonment. His mother was not one being but two aspects of a primordial force, and he himself was not merely a unique curiosity but a deliberate creation with cosmic purpose. Whatever came next would test the limits of his newly stabilized powers and his understanding of reality itself. But as he stood between infinity and chaos, with a representative of humanity at his side, Issei Hyodo felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited him. The son of Ophis and Tiamat. The convergence of infinity and chaos. The key to a new cosmic equilibrium. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, The Scholar's Gambit. The fabric of reality thin. D as Ophis guided their transition between dimensions. Issei observed the process with newfound clarity, his completed convergence allowing him to perceive the subtle manipulations of space-time that his mother performed with such casual mastery. They moved not through reality but around it, traversing the infinite nothing that existed between defined realms. Fascinating, Sora whispered beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. The Himahima Shrine Maiden's spiritual senses, honed through generations of training, allowed her to perceive aspects of their journey that ordinary humans would find incomprehensible. I've read accounts of interdimensional transit in our clan archives, but experiencing it. The records are always incomplete, the Chaos Goddess remarked, her form shimmering with barely contained energy. Unlike Ophis, who maintained perfect stillness during their transit, Tiamat's female aspect radiated constant change, shifting between states of matter, fluctuating in color and composition, yet somehow maintaining a coherent identity throughout. Reality resists being captured in words or symbols. Issei studied both his mothers with new understanding. The convergence had not just stabilized his powers but expanded his perception. Where once he had seen Ophis simply as the emotionless dragon of infinity who had raised him, he now recognized subtleties in her existence. The way she constantly balanced between form and void, presence and absence. Similarly, the Chaos Goddess revealed patterns within her seemingly random fluctuations, a higher order that only became visible when viewed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. We're approaching our destination, Ophis stated, her monotone voice carrying effortlessly through the non-space surrounding them. And where exactly are we going? Issei asked, realizing that in the rush of revelations and confrontations, he had neglected this rather fundamental question. The Chaos Goddess smiled, her teeth airily visible as crystalline structures before shifting back to something more humanoid. To see the only being who might understand the full implications of the Council's actions, a scholar who has dedicated her existence to studying primordial energies. Alara Valahad, Ophis supplied, the name carrying an unusual weight when spoken by the Dragon of Infinity. Sora's eyebrows rose in recognition. The exile of Seventh Heaven. I thought she was a myth, a cautionary tale the Grigori tell their young. The Grigori prefer simple narratives, the Chaos Goddess replied with a dismissive gesture. That briefly transformed the non-space around her hand into miniature galaxies. Alara's crime was curiosity unconstrained by dogma, unforgivable among beings who define themselves through rigid hierarchies. Their transit concluded as reality coalesced around them once more. Issei found himself standing on what appeared to be the surface of an asteroid, a desolate landscape of cratered rock stretching in all directions. Above them hung not stars but mathematical equations, glowing symbols that seemed to describe the fundamental properties of the space they occupied. A pocket dimension, Issei observed, recognizing the artificiality of their surroundings, but constructed using theoretical frameworks rather than defined parameters. Very good, the Chaos Goddess approved. Alara believed reality should be malleable to thought rather than bound by arbitrary constants. At the horizon, a structure came into view, not a building in any conventional sense, but an architectural impossibility that seemed to fold in on itself at multiple points. It resembled a massive geode composed of angles that shouldn't connect, housing a core that glowed with shifting colors similar to those Issei had seen during his convergence. Her research facility, Ophis explained with characteristic brevity. As they approached, Issei noticed that the equations overhead were changing, responding to the IR presence like an adaptive security system. He realized they were being scanned and classified according to some esoteric taxonomy of cosmic entities. "We're being observed," he noted calmly. "Of course you are," came a new voice, precisely articulated with subtle harmonic overtones that marked it as non-human in origin. "Did you expect to approach the foremost theoretical cosmologist in 7 dimensions without triggering basic observational protocols?" The speaker materialized before them, a woman of striking appearance whose age was impossible to determine. Her skin had the pale luminescence of fallen angels, but with subtle iridescent patterns that shifted with her movements. 12 translucent wings emerged from her back, but unlike the feathered appendages of typical angels, these appeared to be composed of complex mathematical formulas etched in light. Her hair formed a gravity-defying cloud of platinum strands that moved independently like the tentacles of a sea creature. Most remarkable were her eyes, solid silver orbs without pupils that somehow conveyed a penetrating intelligence. "Alara," the chaos goddess acknowledged with a slight nod. "Aspect of Tiamat," the fallen angel researcher replied with equal formality. Her silver gaze shifted to Ophis, Ouroboros, then to Sora, Himahima balance keeper. Finally, her attention fixed on Issei with sudden, intense interest. And, oh, fascinating. Quote, without warning, she was directly before Issei, silver eyes inches from his face, her wings extending to form a dome of mathematical formulas around them both. Recently completed convergence, dual primordial lineage, perfect energy stability across 17 reference frames. You're a walking impossibility. Issei remained calm despite the invasion of his personal space. "I've been called worse." A burst of surprised laughter escaped Alara, sounding like crystal bells overlaid with the hum of electrical current. "It speaks." And with such charming understatement, she circled him rapidly, her movements jerky and precise like an insect. "Do you have any idea what you are? The statistical improbability of your existence. The theoretical frameworks you violate simply by standing there breathing." "I'm beginning to get an idea," Issei replied dryly. The chaos goddess made a subtle gesture, and Alara reluctantly backed away, though her silver eyes never left Issei. "Control yourself, scholar. We haven't come for your academic curiosity. No, you've come because the Equilibrium Council is attempting to weaponize primordial chaos," Alara stated matter-of-factly. Her attention still fixed on Issei. A catastrophically stupid endeavor that could unravel causality across multiple dimensional planes. "But that's far less interesting than this specimen you've brought me." "I'm not a specimen," Issei corrected firmly. "And if you know about the Council's actions, then you understand why we're here." Alara's head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Specimen, visitor, unique cosmic entity. Semantics don't change what you represent." Her wings retracted slightly as she finally addressed the group as a whole. "But yes, I'm aware of the Council's activities. Their energy extraction attempts have created detectable distortions in the primordial substrate. Quite alarming if you understand the implications, which clearly they do not." Sora stepped forward, her formal shrine maiden demeanor a stark contrast to Alara's frenetic energy. "The Himahima records mention your research into cosmic equilibrium theory. Is there anything in your work that might explain why the Council would risk such actions?" Alara's attention shifted to Sora, her expression becoming marginally more focused. "Balance Keeper, your clan's understanding of equilibrium is admirably sophisticated for human mystics, but still fundamentally limited by three-dimensional perspective." She made a dismissive gesture, causing several of the floating equations above them to rearrange themselves. "The Council isn't risking cosmic dissolution out of ignorance, they're doing it out of desperation." "Explain," Ophis commanded, her infinite patience apparently reaching its limit. "They've detected a cascade failure in the dimensional boundaries," Alara replied, suddenly serious. "The symptoms have been manifesting for centuries: increased bleed-through between realms, pantheon convergence events, spontaneous manifestation of conceptual beings. But recent measurements suggest exponential acceleration." The chaos goddess frowned, causing the space around her to momentarily destabilize. "The Council believes Tiamat's imprisoned aspect is responsible." "They're partially correct," Alara acknowledged. "Primordial chaos naturally erodes artificial boundaries, literally its function in cosmic architecture. By containing rather than incorporating it, they've created pressure against their containment systems. But extracting and weaponizing that energy won't." Solve their problem. It will catastrophically accelerate it. Issei processed this information, connecting it to the visions he'd experienced during his convergence. The prison I saw, it wasn't just containing my father. It was redirecting his energy into the dimensional boundaries. Alara's silver eyes widened slightly. You've seen it. The actual containment structure. She moved closer again, her academic excitement palpable. What configuration did it use? Hyperdimensional lattice, Mobius topology, conceptual inversion, focus. Alara, the chaos goddess chided. We need solutions, not academic curiosity. The researcher made an irritated sound but composed herself. Very well. Follow me to the central laboratory. We'll need proper analytical tools for this discussion. She led them toward the impossible structure, which seemed to reconfigure itself as they approached. What had appeared as solid walls from a distance revealed themselves to be curtains of pure data, streams of I.N. formation so dense they created the illusion of materiality. Alara walked directly through one such wall, the information parting around her like water. Inside, the research facility defied conventional geometry. Corridors bent at impossible angles, rooms existed in multiple locations simultaneously, and everywhere there were artifacts and equipment that seemed to function across several planes of existence at once. The overall impression was of standing inside a physical manifestation of a particularly complex equation. Ignore the spatial inconsistencies, Alara advised as she noticed Sora's discomfort. This facility operates according to research needs rather than architectural convention. It's beautiful, Issei commented, genuinely appreciating the elegant complexity of the space. Alara paused mid-stride, turning to study him with renewed interest. You perceive the underlying patterns. It wasn't a question. Most visitors experience nausea, disorientation, or existential panic. Even supernatural entities typically require adjustment periods. Issei shrugged. I was raised in dimensional pockets by the embodiment of infinity. Conventional spatial relationships were never really my baseline. For the first time, Alara smiled, a surprisingly human expression on her otherwise alien features. Perhaps you're not merely a statistical anomaly after all. She continued eating them through the impossible geometry of her facility until they reached what appeared to be the central chamber. The room defied description in conventional terms. It resembled a spherical observatory. But instead of viewing the cosmos from inside out, it seemed to contain the cosmos within itself. Miniature galaxies and dimensional planes floated throughout the space, connected by threads of energy that pulsed with data. At the center stood a crystalline structure similar in configuration to what Issei had glimpsed of his father's prison, though vastly smaller in scale. My primary research model, Alara explained, gesturing toward the crystal, a simplified analog of the Council's containment system, constructed from observational data and theoretical extrapolation. The Chaos Goddess approached the model, her form shifting more rapidly as she neared it. You've recreated their work with remarkable accuracy. Don't sound so surprised, aspect of Tiamat, Alara replied with a hint of pride. I was designing containment systems for the seventh heaven while your physical manifestations were still learning to maintain coherent forms. Ophis moved to the opposite side of the model, her void energy creating visible distortions in the miniature dimensional representations surrounding it. Show us what the Council is attempting. Alara made a complex gesture, and the crystal structure transformed, portions of it reconfiguring to reveal an internal mechanism that hadn't been visible before. They've installed extraction arrays at 7 critical junction points within the primary containment lattice. Each array is designed to siphon specific aspects of primordial chaos energy while theoretically leaving the core integrity intact. She manipulated the model further, causing red energy to flow from the crystal into the surrounding dimensional representations. Their intention is to reinforce failing dimensional boundaries by introducing controlled chaos energy as a binding agent. It's actually quite brilliant from a theoretical standpoint, using the very force that erodes boundaries to reinforce them, creating a self-sustaining system. But it won't work, Issei stated, understanding the fundamental flaw immediately. Alara's silver eyes fixed on him with approval. Exactly. It cannot work because primordial chaos cannot be controlled through external systems, Issei continued. The knowledge seemingly arising from his very nature. It can only be channeled through entities that embody both chaos and order simultaneously. He glanced at his mothers. Like me, The silence that followed was weighted with significance. Sora looked between the primordial beings with growing comprehension, her training as a balance keeper allowing her to grasp the implications. He was created for this purpose, she said quietly. To safely interface with both the prison and the dimensional boundaries. The Chaos Goddess nodded, her form momentarily. Why stabilizing into something more definitively feminine? From the moment the Council constructed their prison, we knew this day would come. The containment was always temporary, a necessary phase in a longer process. So I'm the key, Issei concluded. But to what exactly? Releasing my father. Repairing the dimensional boundaries. Both. Neither. Ophis stated in her characteristic monotone. You are not a key, but a transformer. Your function is to establish a new paradigm of cosmic architecture. Alara's wings extended with excitement, the mathematical formulas within them calculating at visible speed. Of course, he's not meant to unlock or repair, he's meant to evolve the entire system. A living nexus point capable of reconciling opposed primordial forces. Her silver eyes gleamed with academic passion. The theoretical implications alone are worth 17 research cycles. The application potential across multiple cosmological frameworks. Alara, the Chaos Goddess interrupted firmly. Focus. The researcher collected herself with visible effort. Right. Practical concerns. Dimensional stability. Existential threats. Less interesting but admittedly more urgent. She manipulated the model again. Zooming in on one of the extraction arrays. The Council has already activated the first extraction sequence. My instruments detected the energy signature approximately 72 hours ago. Based on the cascade patterns, they'll activate the second array within 48 hours, believing the apparent success of the first extraction confirms their theory. What they don't realize, Issei observed, studying the model closely, is that the first extraction only appeared successful because my father allowed it to be. He's containing the instability internally rather than letting it manifest in the dimensional boundaries. Alara looked at him with newfound respect. Precisely. But that containment is temporary. With each additional extraction, the strain increases exponentially. By the fourth extraction, she demonstrated on the model, causing alarming fractures to appear throughout the miniature dimensions. Catastrophic boundary collapse begins. By the seventh, the entire model imploded. Then exploded outward in a spray of chaotic energy. Total dissolution of ordered reality across all connected planes. Sora paled visibly. How many planes would be affected? All of them. Alara replied simply. Every realm, dimension, and pocket of existence that maintains connections to the primary realms, which is essentially everything except the most isolated pocket dimensions. The implications were staggering. Not just the destruction of Earth or the supernatural realms associated with it, but the collapse of heaven, hell, and countless other dimensional planes inhabited by billions of beings across multiple species and pantheons. Then our course is clear, Issei stated with calm determination. We need to reach my father's prison before Council activates the second extraction array. That presents several significant challenges, Alara countered, manipulating the model to display a new configuration. First, the prison exists outside conventional space-time. It's accessible only through specific approach vectors that the Council controls absolutely. Second, it's defended by the most sophisticated security systems ever devised. Designed specifically to repel primordial entities. She gestured toward Ophis and the Chaos Goddess. Your mothers cannot approach directly without triggering catastrophic defensive measures. And third, the Chaos Goddess added. The Council is now aware of our interest. They will have maximized security protocols and possibly accelerated their extraction timeline. Issei considered these obstacles, his mind working through potential strategies. The convergence had not just stabilized his powers but enhanced his analytical capabilities, allowing him to process complex tactical problems with unprecedented clarity. We need information before we can act, he decided. Detailed schematics of the prison, the Council's security protocols, and the exact specifications of their extraction technology. I can provide theoretical models based on observational data, Alara offered, but the Council's internal systems are isolated from external observation. For detailed schematics, you need access to their central archives. Quote, Sora stepped forward. The Himahima clan maintains diplomatic relations with several members of the Equilibrium Council. As a balance keeper, I could LLY request limited access to non-classified archives through official channels. Too slow, Office stated, and the Council would immediately recognize such a request as connected to our intentions. Issei nodded in agreement. We need a more direct approach. He turned to Alara. You mentioned the prison exists outside conventional space-time. Does that mean its temporal reference frame is constant? Or does it exist in multiple temporal states simultaneously? Alara's silver eyes widened with understanding. Multiple temporal states. It has to, in order to contain a primordial chaos entity effectively. Her wings flared with excitement. You're thinking of temporal intersection access. It's theoretically possible but incredibly dangerous. The slightest miscalculation would scatter my component atoms across 17 dimensions, Issei finished calmly. I'm aware of the risks. But my dual nature should allow me to maintain coherence across temporal phase shifts. Even so, you need precise calibration data to attempt such an approach, Alara cautioned. The kind of data that only exists in. She stopped suddenly, a look of realization crossing her features. Oh, that's clever. The Chaos Goddess smiled, the expression causing localized reality distortions around her mouth. He is our son, after all. Sora looked between them in confusion. What am I missing? The Akashic Synchronicity Engine, Alara explained, practically vibrating with intellectual excitement. It's a theoretical construct that exists simultaneously at all points in the Council's history. If one could access it, even briefly, quote, we could extract the exact temporal coordinates needed to approach the prison through its temporal blind spots, Issei concluded. But accessing the engine would require someone intimately familiar with Council systems yet not currently monitored by them. All eyes turned to Alara, whose wings pulled tight against her back in a gesture of sudden wariness. Absolutely not. I've maintained my independence precisely by avoiding direct confrontation with the Council. My exile is tolerable only because I restrict my research to theoretical applications. Your exile was never about your research, the Chaos Goddess countered. It was about what you discovered within the Akashic Synchronicity Engine the last time you accessed it. Alara went very still, her silver eyes dimming slightly. That was 3,000 years ago. I was young and careless. What did you find? Issei asked gently. The fallen angel scientist was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its academic enthusiasm, replaced by something older and wearier. Evidence that the Equilibrium Council didn't discover the means to contain primordial entities. They were given that knowledge by something older than themselves. Something that exists outside even the primordial framework. Her silver gaze shifted to the Chaos Goddess. Something that your aspect recognized, didn't it? The Chaos Goddess neither confirmed nor denied this, but her constant shifting briefly synchronized into a pattern that Issei recognized as an ancient symbol of affirmation. The Council serves another master, Alara continued. One that requires cosmic stagnation rather than natural evolution. When I attempted to identify this entity within the engine, I am immediately branded a heretic and exiled from seventh heaven. The implications were enormous, suggesting a hidden power behind the supposedly neutral Equilibrium Council, manipulating events toward some unknown purpose. All the more reason we need to access the engine, Issei concluded. Not just for the temporal coordinates, but to understand what we're truly facing. Alara's wings twitched with nervous energy. You don't understand. The engine isn't just a database, it's semi-sentient. It remembers those who access it and adapts its defenses accordingly. If I attempt access again, it will recognize me instantly. Unless, Issei suggested thoughtfully, you had a means of masking your identity signature. Someone whose unique energy pattern could envelop yours, rendering you temporarily unrecognizable to the engine's identification systems. Understanding dawned in Alara's silver eyes. Your convergent energy signature is unprecedented. The engine would have no reference frame for classification. Exactly. Issei turned to his mothers. Could it work? Ophis considered for a moment, then nodded once. Theoretically sound. Your convergent nature creates sufficient interference patterns to mask secondary energy signatures within your immediate proximity. It's still incredibly dangerous, Alara protested, though with noticeably less conviction. The engine exists at a nexus point within the Council's extra-dimensional headquarters. Security there is absolute. Nothing is absolute. the Chaos Goddess remarked with a smile that briefly transformed into a fractal pattern before resolving back to humanoid features. Except perhaps my counterpart here. She nodded toward Ophis, who acknowledged the observation with the barest tilt of her head. Sora, who had been listening intently to this exchange, stepped forward. If you're planning an infiltration of the Council's headquarters, you'll need more than just scientific expertise and convergent energy. She drew herself up with formal dignity. You'll need someone who understands their protocols and can navigate their bureaucratic systems. And you believe yourself qualified? Ophis asked, her tone nate, her dismissive nor encouraging, merely seeking information. The Himahima Balance Keepers have served as diplomatic intermediaries between the Council and various supernatural factions for centuries, Sora explained. I've undergone formal training in Council etiquette, documentation procedures, and hierarchical protocols. While I've never visited their headquarters, I would not appear out of place in their administrative sections. Issei considered this thoughtfully. Having someone who understood the Council's bureaucratic systems could prove invaluable, especially if they needed to move less secure areas before reaching the Akashic Synchronicity engine. But it would also place Sora in significant danger. The risk to you would be considerable, he noted, studying her determined expression. If the Council discovered your involvement, the Himahima clan could face severe repercussions. Sora met his gaze steadily. The potential dissolution of all connected dimensional planes is a greater concern than political consequences. Besides, she added with unexpected steel in her voice, the Balance Keepers have maintained a facade of subservience to the Council while quietly preparing for this very scenario for generations. This revelation caused even Alara to look at Sora with newfound interest. What exactly do you mean, Shrine Maiden? The first Himahima who contacted the Council recorded a prophecy. Sora explained, her formal tone taking on an almost ritual quality. She foresaw a time when the false equilibrium would threaten true balance, when contained Shao's would need to be integrated rather than imprisoned. Our clan has preserved this prophecy and prepared for its fulfillment through 17 generations. The Chaos Goddess laughed, the sound causing small objects throughout the laboratory to briefly transform into their component elements before reforming. Humans continue to surprise me with their foresight. It seems the Himahima understood he cosmic game better than the Council themselves. Ophis, typically unmoved by such revelations, actually nodded slightly in what might have been approval. Logical preparation. The Himahima clan's involvement is acceptable. Issei looked at Sora with new appreciation. Her participation wasn't merely about diplomatic knowledge, she and her clan had been preparing for this moment throughout their entire history. It lent her presence a sense of destined purpose that resonated with his own newly discovered cosmic role. So we have our team, he concluded. Alara provides the scientific expertise, Sora the diplomatic cover, and I the energy signature to mask our approach. He turned to his mothers. What will your roles be? Distraction, Ophis stated simply. The Chaos Goddess smiled wickedly. The Council fears nothing more than direct confrontation with primordial entities. If we approach their outer boundaries simultaneously from multiple vectors, they will deploy maximum resources to contain us, resources that won't be available to monitor internal systems. A classic diversion strategy, Issei acknowledged with a slight smile. Simple but effective. The most elegant solutions often are, Alara noted. Her academic interest clearly overcoming her earlier reluctance. Her wings extended fully, the mathematical formulas within them calculating at visible speed. If we're actually doing this, and I appear to be outvoted on that point, then we need to prepare properly. The engine's access protocols will have evolved significantly since my last interaction. She moved to a different section of her impossible laboratory, beckoning them to follow. This area contained what appeared to be a scale model of an immense geometric structure, a perfect dodecahedron composed of smaller dodecahedrons. Each facet inscribed with symbols that shifted and changed as they watched. The Council's headquarters, Alara explained, manipulating the model with precise gestures. Or at least, its manifestation in comprehensible dimensions. The actual structure exists across 17 reference planes simultaneously. The model expanded, revealing internal configurations of increasing complexity. Alara indicated a point near the center where all planes seemed to intersect. The Akashic Synchronicity Engine occupies this nexus point. It can only be accessed through authorized dimensional gates located here, here, and here. She highlighted 3 points at different levels of the structure. Most visitors and even lower-ranking council members use the primary gate, she continued, indicating the largest access point. It's the most heavily guarded but also processes the highest volume of traffic. The secondary gate is reserved for council grandmasters and special envoys, Issei. Security is more sophisticated but less visibly intensive. The tertiary gate is emergency access only, theoretically accessible solely to the Grandmaster Prime. Theoretically, Issei prompted, catching her specific wording. Alara's mouth curved in a small, satisfied smile. The tertiary gate's security is based on energy signature recognition rather than physical or dimensional barriers. It's CA, liberated to admit only the Grandmaster Prime's specific pattern, a pattern I happened to record during my last unauthorized access. You've been planning a return visit all along, the Chaos Goddess observed with amusement. Planning? No. Maintaining options? Absolutely. Alara's wings fluttered with nervous energy. Academic curiosity is a powerful motivator, even against better judgment. Sora studied the model carefully. If we use the tertiary gate, we'll avoid the main security forces, but won't the engine itself detect unauthorized access once we're inside? That's where Issei's unique signature becomes essential. Alara explained. The engine identifies users through their energy patterns. If he can extend his convergent field to encompass both of us while simultaneously projecting aspects of the Grandmaster Prime's recorded pattern, the engine should register us as authorized anomalies rather than intruders. Should? Issei questioned, raising an eyebrow. Science advances through experimental verification. Alara replied with a shrug that sent ripples of mathematical calculations through her wings. No one has ever tested these systems with a convergent being of dual primordial lineage before. You're effectively an unknown variable in their equations. Ophis, who had been studying the model with infinite patience, pointed to a specific section of the structure. The Council will have modified their security protocols following recent events. Standard adaptation patterns suggest reinforcement here and here. She indicated several junction points throughout the complex. Agreed. The Chaos Goddess added. They will anticipate conventional approaches based on known primordial behavior patterns. Her form briefly shifted into a configuration of pure geometric abstraction before resolving back to humanoid appearance. Which is why our distraction must appear predictably threatening while concealing its true purpose. A double bluff, Issei nodded approvingly. They'll detect the obvious distraction, assume they've identified our true strategy, and miss the actual infiltration entirely. Alara manipulated the model again, this time focusing on temporal aspects represented by color-shifting waves flowing through the structure. The tertiary gate operates on an asynchronous temporal cycle. It only becomes accessible for approximately 3 minutes during each rotation of the engine's maintenance sequence. How frequently does this sequence occur? Sora asked. Every 17 hours by external reference time, Alara replied. The next window opens in approximately 11 hours. Quote, then we have limited time to prepare, Issei concluded. He turned to his mothers. Can you maintain a convincing distraction for the necessary duration? The Chaos Goddess laughed, the sound causing localized reality fluctuations. My dear son, I once maintained 17 simultaneous manifestations across 12 dimensions for a millennium simply to win a debate with Vishnu. This will be trivial by comparison. Ophis merely nodded once, requiring no elaboration on her capabilities. Then let's prepare, Issei decided. Alara, what do you need to maximize our chances of success? The researcher's silver eyes gleamed with renewed purpose. Access to your energy signature at maximum controlled output. I need to calibrate my instruments to map a ND potentially replicate aspects of your convergent pattern. And I need to review the Council's current administrative protocols, Sora added. The Himahima archives contain recent diplomatic correspondences that might reveal procedural changes or new security measures. Can you access these archives remotely? Issei asked. Sora nodded. Through proper meditation techniques, I can establish a spiritual link to our clan's central repository. It's a limited connection, but sufficient for this purpose. Good. Issei turned back to Alara. Let's begin the calibration process immediately. He The sooner we understand how my energy signature interacts with your instruments, the better prepared we'll be. As the others moved to their assigned tasks, Issei found himself momentarily alone with his thoughts. The past 24 hours had transformed his understanding of himself and his place in the cosmos. From a carefully hidden secret to the potential savior, or destroyer, of multiple dimensional planes. The responsibility should have felt crushing, yet instead he experienced a strange sense of clarity and purpose. This was why he existed. Not as an accident or cosmic anomaly, but as a deliberate creation designed for this precise moment in time. The convergence of infinity and chaos, embodied in a single being capable of transcending the artificial boundaries that separated primordial forces. His contemplation was interrupted as Alara approached, carrying what appeared to be a crystalline headset of complex design. This will allow me to directly measure your energy output across all 17 reference frames simultaneously, she explained, her earlier academic enthusiasm fully restored. It might cause some discomfort as it establishes initial baselines. Define some discomfort, Issei replied dryly. Nothing approaching the pain of convergence, Alara assured him, then added with characteristic bluntness, though it might briefly feel like your consciousness is being pulled apart into constituent components and reassembled in non-Euclidean configurations. Charming. Despite his sarcasm, Issei took the device and carefully positioned it on his head. Let's proceed. The moment the crystalline structure made contact with his skin, Issei felt a jarring sensation as his perception suddenly expanded across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was disorienting but manageable, significantly less traumatic than the convergence process he had recently completed. Alara watched with fascination as data began flowing through her wings, the mathematical formulas reconfiguring in response to the measurements. Extraordinary, she murmured. Your energy signature maintains perfect coherence across all reference frames while simultaneously existing in 17 distinct states. Is that unusual? Issei asked, finding it increasingly easy to maintain normal conversation despite the expanded perception. Unusual, Alara laughed, the sound carrying harmonic overtones that interacted strangely with the measurement process. It should be impossible. Even primordial entities typically manifest differently across different reference frames, aspects rather than unified presence. You're somehow both singular and multiple simultaneously. Her silver eyes gleamed with intellectual excitement. The implications for unified field theory alone are revolutionary, not to mention the applications for cross-dimensional travel and communication. Issei felt a strange sense of pride at her assessment. Not vanity about his abilities, but satisfaction to his unique nature might contribute to greater understanding of cosmic principles. Can you use this to help us access the engine? He asked, focusing on their immediate objective. Absolutely. Era manipulated the data flowing through her wings, extracting specific patterns and compiling them into a coherent framework. With these measurements, I can create a modified approach vector that allow us to bypass conventional identification protocols. The engine will register your signature as an authorized anomaly, something to be studied rather than rejected. As she worked, Sora returned from her meditation. Her expression thoughtful. The Council has indeed increased security protocols throughout their domain. According to recent diplomatic correspondences, they've implemented something called Primordial Containment Protocol Omega within the past 48 hours. Alara's hand stilled momentarily. Omega-level containment. That's reserved for extinction-level threats. They fear what they don't understand. The Chaos Goddess commented, rejoining the conversation. And they understand very little about true cosmic balance. Ophis, who had been observing from a distance with characteristic stillness, moved closer. Protocol Omega suggests accelerated timeline. The second extraction may be scheduled earlier than anticipated. This new information created a greater sense of urgency. If the Council had indeed escalated to their highest security protocols and potentially moved up their extraction schedule, their window of opportunity might be narrower than originally calculated. We need to adjust our approach, Issei decided. Alara, can we access the tertiary gate before the next scheduled window if necessary? The researcher considered this, her wings calculating new probabilities. Theoretically yes, but it would require forcing a maintenance cycle through external stimulus. The only way to trigger that would be a localized temporal distortion. F sufficient magnitude to activate the engine's self-preservation protocols. And can we create such a distortion? Alara's silver eyes fixed on him with new assessment. With your energy signature as a catalyst, possibly. But it would be incredibly risky. Any miscalculation could create a cascading temporal fracture that would alert every security system in the complex. Sometimes calculated risks are necessary. Issei replied calmly. Prepare for both scenarios, the scheduled window and the forced access option. We'll make the final decision based on updated intelligence closer to execution time. As preparations continued, Issei found an unexpected moment of quiet with Sora. The shrine maiden had removed her ceremonial outer robes, revealing a more practical outfit underneath that Till maintained traditional Himahima design elements. She was reviewing complex diagrams of council protocol that Alara had provided, her expression focused and determined. You've adjusted remarkably well to all this, Issei observed, genuinely impressed by her composure throughout the cascade of cosmic revelations. Sora looked up from her studies, a small smile softening her usually formal demeanor. The Himahima are trained from childhood to accept that reality is always more complex than it appears. When you grow up communicating with spirits and maintaining balance between supernatural forces, cosmic conspiracies seem like a natural progression. Her candor surprised a laugh from Issei. Fair point. Still, learning that your clan has been preparing for this specific prophecy for generations must have been significant. Even for you. She was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. I always knew I was being prepared for something important. The intensity of my training. The specific knowledge I was required to master, it went beyond standard balance keeper protocols. Her violet eyes met his with unexpected vulnerability. What I never anticipated was that IWOU find the experience exhilarating rather than terrifying. Exhilarating, Issei echoed, studying her with newfound interest. My entire life has been defined by tradition and duty, she explained. I've never questioned my role or the restrictions it placed on me. But this, she gestured to encompass Alara's impossible laboratory, the cosmic model, the primordial beings discussing strategy nearby, this feels like purpose. Like everything I've learned and sacrificed finally has meaning beyond maintaining an increasingly fragile status quo. Her honesty resonated with Issei's own experience. The sense of finding his true purpose after years of careful preparation and hidden existence. Before he could respond, however, Alara's voice interrupted their moment of connection. Energy calibration complete, the researcher announced, removing the crystalline headset from Issei with careful precision. And I must say, the results exceed even my most optimistic hypotheses. You're convergent. Nature creates possibilities that defy conventional physical limitations. The Chaos Goddess drifted closer, her form momentarily resembling a collection of interconnected geometric patterns before resolving back to humanoid appearance. Have you identified an optimal approach vector? Better than that, Alara replied, her wings displaying complex calculations as she spoke. I've mapped 17 potential vectors, each calibrated to a different security response scenario. Whatever countermeasures the Council employs, we'll have a viable alternative. Ophis, who had been maintaining silent vigilance nearby, suddenly tensed, her form becoming momentarily less substantial as she extended her senses outward. We have company. Almost immediately, alarm systems throughout Alara's facility activated, causing the equations overhead to shift from their normal patterns to pulsing red warning symbols. The researcher moved to a control interface, her wings flaring with concern. Multiple incursion attempts detected at the dimensional boundaries, she reported. Pattern signature indicates Equilibrium Council advance team, likely a reconnaissance force rather than full assault. Issei immediately shifted to tactical assessment. How did they find this location? Your research facility should be undetectable to conventional tracking methods. It is, Alara confirmed, manipulating controls to strengthen her dimensional barriers. Which means they're not using conventional tracking. They must have. Her silver eyes widened in realization. They're following the measurement traces from the calibration process. Your energy signature is unique enough to leave detectable patterns even through dimensional shielding. The Chaos Goddess smiled, though the expression held no humor. It seems the Council is more desperate than we anticipated. They've deployed resources to track a single convergent energy spike rather than maintaining full containment around our primary signatures. She glanced toward Ophis. They're afraid. Fear accelerates timelines, Ophis observed in her monotone voice. Second extraction imminent. This changed everything. If the council was already moving against them and potentially accelerating their extraction schedule, waiting for the scheduled maintenance window was no longer viable. They needed to act immediately. Alara, initiate forced access protocols, Issei decided. Sora, prepare for immediate departure. Mother, he addressed both primordial entities simultaneously. Your distraction needs to begin now, not when we reach the gate. The chaotic goddess laughed, the sound causing localized reality distortions throughout the laboratory. Always so commanding, my son. You truly are our offspring. Her form began to lose cohesion, splitting into multiple identical manifestations that vibrated at different frequencies. I shall give the council something worthy of their protocol Omega. Ophis simply nodded once, then seemed to collapse inward, her form dissolving into a perfect void that quickly expanded to create a dimensional tear in the fabric of reality itself. Through this tear, Issei glimpsed what appeared to be the outer boundaries of the council headquarters, a massive geometric structure floating in dimensional non-space. They'll detect that immediately, Alara observed, her wings calculating new probabilities as she worked. Every primordial sensor in 17 dimensions will activate. Precisely the point, Issei confirmed. While they focus on containing two primordial entities simultaneously manifesting at their perimeter, we'll slip through the tertiary gate during the confusion. Sora moved to his side, her Himahima training evident in her composed efficiency. The administrative protocols I reviewed mentioned emergency response patterns. When facing multiple primordial threats, the Council will implement convergent containment formation, leaving the tertiary access points with minimal oversight. Minimal but not zero, Alara cautioned as she completed her preparations. We'll still face automated security systems and potentially a skeleton staff of equilibrium keepers. We'll handle them, Issei replied confidently. Your focus needs to be on forcing that maintenance cycle and getting us to the engine as quickly as possible. Outside the laboratory's dimensional boundaries, they could sense massive power deployments as the Council responded to the dual threat of Ophis and the Chaos Goddess. Alarms continued to blare throughout Alara's facility as more reconnaissance for CES probed for weaknesses in her defenses. They're more persistent than I anticipated, the researcher noted with grudging respect. My outer barriers are holding but won't withstand concentrated assault for long. They don't need to, Issei assured her. Once we depart, your facility will no longer be their primary concern. Oddly, that's not as comforting as you might think, Alara replied dryly. She made a final adjustment to her instruments, then nodded with satisfaction. Forced maintenance cycle calculations complete. I can create the necessary temporal distortion using a combinati on of your convergent energy and my knowledge of the engine's response patterns. She produced what appeared to be a crystalline sphere from somewhere within her impossible laboratory. The object pull, said with complex energy patterns that shifted and changed as they watched. A temporal catalyst, she explained, handling the sphere with extreme care. Designed to create precisely calibrated distortions in local space-time. I'll need to attune it to your energy signature for maximum effectiveness. Issei placed his hands on the sphere as directed, channeling a controlled measure of his converg and power into the crystalline structure. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The sphere's pulsing patterns synchronized with his own internal energy, creating a harmonic resonance that caused visible distortions in the surrounding space. Perfect, Alara breathed, her silver eyes gleaming with scientific satisfaction. The catalyst is fully attuned. Now we need to establish our departure coordinates. She manipulated the model of the Council headquarters once more, focusing on a specific point near the tertiary gate. This is our target location, a maintenance junction 17 spatial units from the gate itself. It's minimally monitored and provides direct access to the temporal regulation conduits we need to effect. Sora studied the location with careful attention. According to the diplomatic protocols, that section should be restricted to technical oversight keepers. We'll need appropriate identification signatures if we encounter active personnel. Already prepared, Alara assured her, producing 3 crystalline badges that hummed with subtle energy. These will project appropriate identity fields for casual inspection. They won't withstand detailed scrutiny, but they should suffice for brief encounters. The facility shuddered as another, stronger probe tested its defenses. Alara frowned, her wings pulling tight against her back. We need to leave now. My secondary barriers won't hold much longer. Issei nodded, accepting the identity badge and securing it to his clothing. Final preparations complete. Let's proceed. Alara activated a sequence of controls that caused a portion of her laboratory to reconfigure itself, forming what appeared to be a dimensional transit chamber. The space within the chamber warped and twisted, showing glimpses of multiple locations before settling on their target coordinates. Remember, the researcher cautioned as they prepared to enter, once we arrive, we'll have approximately 3 minutes to reach the temporal regulation conduits and initiate the forced maintenance cycle. If we miss that window, security protocols will reset and our presence will be detected. Issei understood the stakes perfectly. This was an all-or-nothing gambit, their one opportunity to access the information they needed before the council proceeded with their catastrophic extraction plan. Stay close to me at all times, he instructed both Alara and Sora. My convergent energy field will help mask our presence from automated detection systems, but only at close range. The three stepped into the transit chamber together, I at the center with Alara and Sora positioned on either side of him. As the dimensional transition initiated, Issei extended his awareness outward, creating a controlled field of convergent energy that enveloped his companions. The transition itself was unlike any dimensional travel he had experienced before. Rather than moving through space, they seemed to phase between states of existence, entirely occupying multiple potential locations before resolving into their target coordinates. The sensation was disorienting but manageable, especially given Issei's recent convergence experience. When reality stabilized around them, they found themselves in a crystalline corridor that seemed to extend indefinitely in both directions. The walls, floor, and ceiling were composed of the same transparent material, through which complex energy patterns flowed in precise geometric configurations. The maintenance junction, Alara whispered, already moving toward a control panel embedded in one wall. We need to access the temporal regulation conduits through this interface. Sora took up a watchful position near the corridor junction, her spiritual senses extended to detect approaching council personnel. Clear for now, but I sense active security measures throughout this section. Issei maintained his convergent field around them, carefully modulating its output to mask their presence without creating detectable anomalies. He could feel the council's systems all around them, incredibly sophisticated detection mechanisms designed to identify and categorize every energy signature within their domain. Alara worked rapidly at the control panel, her wings displaying complex calculations as she bypassed security protocols and accessed the temporal regulation systems. The conduits are responding to the catalyst's signature, she reported with cautious optimism. Initiating forced maintenance sequence now. She inserted the temporal catalyst into a receptacle within the panel, causing an immediate reaction throughout the surrounding systems. The energy patterns visible through the crystalline structures accelerated, shifting from their orderly flow to more chaotic configurations. It's working, she confirmed, monitoring the changes with expert precision. The engine is registering a temporal anomaly and initiating emergency maintenance protocols. From somewhere deep within the complex, they heard a low, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate at a fundamental level of reality itself. The sound grew in complexity, resolving into a harmonic pattern that Issei somehow recognized as the Akashic Synchronicity engine responding to unexpected stimuli. That's our signal, Alara stated, retrieving the temporal catalyst and securing it within her robes. The tertiary G8 will be accessible in approximately 90 seconds. We need to move now. They proceeded down the crystalline corridor with urgent purpose, Sora leading the way based on the memorized schematics of this section. Issei maintained their protective energy field while remaining alert for any sign of security response to their presence. The diversion appears to be working, Sora observed as they moved. I can sense massive power deployments at the complex's outer boundaries. The council is fully engaged with the primordial manifestations. Don't get overconfident, Alara cautioned. The engine in itself has semi-autonomous security systems that operate independently of the main council forces. They reached a junction where the crystalline corridor branched in 3 directions. According to their preparations, the tertiary gate should be accessible through the central path. As they approached this intersection, However, Issei sensed a subtle shift in the surrounding energy patterns. "Wait," he commanded softly, extending his awareness more precisely. Security sweep approaching from the right branch. They pressed themselves against the left wall, Issei intensifying his convergent field to maximum masking effect. Moments later, two figures appeared, humanoid in basic form but composed of crystalline energy rather than flesh. Their features were identical and eerily perfect, lacking any individual characteristics that might distinguish one from the other. "Equilibrium keepers," Alara whispered, her wings pulling tight against her back to minimize her profile. "Automated security constructs programmed to maintain system integrity during maintenance cycles." The constructs moved with mechanical precision, scanning the corridor with pulses of energy that swept through the crystalline walls in expanding waves. As one such pulse approached their position, Issei subtly altered his convergent field, causing it to reflect the pulse's pattern rather than absorb or deflect it. The security sweep passed over them without pause, the constructs continuing their patrol down the left branch without giving any indication they had detected the intruders. "Impressive adaptation," Alara commented once the danger had passed. "How did you know to mirror the scan pattern?" "I didn't," Issei admitted. "I simply responded instinctively to the energy signature. My convergent nature allows me to harmonize with diverse energy types without conscious calculation." Alara's silver eyes gleamed with renewed academic interest. "The applications for stealth technology alone are revolutionary. If we survive this, I'm going to request a full research cycle with your energy pattern." "Let's focus on the survival part first," Sora suggested pragmatically, already moving toward the central branch. "The tertiary gate should be just ahead." The central corridor led them to a circular chamber dominated by what appeared to be a freestanding doorway composed of pure energy. Unlike conventional dimensional gates, this one contained no visible portal or aperture, just a framework of intricately patterned energy fields that shifted and realigned in complex sequences. "The tertiary gate," Alara confirmed, approaching the structure with cautious reverence. "Accessible now due to the maintenance cycle we triggered." She studied the energy patterns for a moment, then nodded in satisfaction. "The forced sequence worked perfectly. The gate is ready to accept transit commands." She produced a small crystalline device from within her robes and began calibrating it to the gate's current configuration. "This will establish our access parameters, targeting the direct approach vector to the engine's interface chamber." As she worked, Issei felt a subtle disturbance in the surrounding energy fields, a ripple of awareness that suggested the engine itself had detected their presence despite his convergent masking field. "We've been noticed," he stated calmly. "Not identified yet, but definitely noticed. We need to accelerate our timeline." Alara nodded, working faster with the calibration device. "Almost complete. The challenge isn't accessing the gate, it's convincing it that we have authorization to approach the engine directly." Sora moved to a control panel near the chamber in trance, her knowledge of council protocols proving useful. "I can initiate a secondary security override using administrative credentials. It won't last long, but it should create enough confusion in the authorization systems to get us through." The Shrine Maiden's fingers moved across the panel with surprising expertise, inputting complex command sequences that caused the surrounding systems to flicker momentarily. "Administrative override accepted," she reported with quiet satisfaction. "We have approximately 60 seconds before the system reconciles the conflicting authorization patterns." Alara completed her calibrations and applied the device directly to the gate's energy framework. The effect was immediate. The shifting patterns stabilized into a specific configuration, and the empty doorway suddenly filled with swirling energy that coalesced into a visible portal. "Access established," the researcher announced. "The portal leads directly to the engine's interface chamber." She turned to Issei with unexpected gravity. "Once we enter, there's no turning back. The engine will immediately attempt to classify and respond to our presence." Issei nodded his understanding. "Remember to stay within my convergent field at all times. When we reach the interface, focus on extracting only the essential information, temporal coordinates for the prison approach and any data regarding the extraction technology. And the identity of whatever's controlling the council," Alara added with determined intensity. "I've waited 3,000 years to confirm what I glimpsed during my exile. I'm not leaving without that information." Before Issei could respond, alarm tone suddenly echoed throughout the chamber. The crystalline walls pulsed with warning patterns, and the security systems around them shifted to heightened alert status. "They've detected the unauthorized gate access," Sora reported, already moving away from the control panel. "We need to go now." Without further hesitation, the three stepped through the portal together, Issei maintaining his protective field around them as they transitioned. The passage through the tertiary gate was unlike standard dimensional travel. Instead of physical movement through space, they experienced a conceptual shift. As if their very identities were being translated into purer information and reassembled on the other side. When reality stabilized around them once more, they found themselves in a vast spherical chamber unlike anything Issei had ever encountered. The space seemed to exist both physically and informationally simultaneously, with walls composed of pure data streams that somehow maintained solid form while remaining visibly in flux. At the center of the chamber floated what could only be the Akashic Synchronicity engine itself, a perfect geometric structure of impossible complexity that shifted between 17 distinct configurations in a continuous cycle. It emitted no light yet somehow illuminated the entire chamber with a quality of awareness that transcended mere radiance. "We've made it," Alara whispered, her voice carrying equal measures of awe and trepidation. The heart of the Council's power, the repository of all cosmic knowledge across all timelines. The engine seemed to pulse in response to her words. The data streams throughout the chamber momentarily synchronizing before resuming their individual patterns. Issei felt the vast intelligence studying them, not with hostility, but with a cold, analytical curiosity that somehow felt more dangerous than outright aggression. "It's aware of us," he observed, carefully maintaining his convergent field at maximum strength. "But it hasn't triggered security protocols yet. It's curious. The engine exists to collect and categorize information," Alara explained, already moving toward what appeared to be an interface terminal near the chamber's perimeter. "Your convergent nature represents a novel data point it hasn't encountered before. It's analyzing before responding." Sora remained vigilant near the chamber entrance, monitoring for any sign of security response. How long will its curiosity override its security directives? "Not long," Alara replied grimly, activating the interface terminal with precise gestures. "Minutes at most. Once it completes its initial classification attempt and fails to categorize Issei's energy signature properly, it will default to containment protocols." The researcher worked with incredible speed, her wings displaying complex calculations as she navigated the engine's data structures. "I'm accessing the temporal coordinates for the prison first. Those will be you. Ender highest security and take longest to extract." Issei stood beside her, dividing his attention between maintaining their protective field and studying the engine itself. The structure's shifting configurations seemed to follow a pattern that resonated with his own dual nature, cycles of order and chaos, containment and expansion, that mirrored the primordial forces flowing through his own being. "It's beautiful," he observed quietly, "a perfect synthesis of opposing principles, maintained in perpetual balance." "That's what makes it so dangerous," Alara responded without looking up from her work. "It embodies the Council's fundamental philosophy, that balance can only be maintained through rigid control rather than natural harmony." Her silver eyes narrowed in concentration. "There. Temporal coordinates located and extracted." The data streamed through her wings, being stored within the crystalline structures for later retrieval. She immediately moved to the next query, searching for information on the extraction technology being used on Tiamat's imprisoned aspect. As she worked, Issei felt the engine's analysis shifting, its curiosity giving way to something closer to alarm. As it failed to properly categorize his convergent nature within its taxonomic framework. "Its patience is wearing thin," he warned. "How much longer?" "Extraction schematics acquired," Alara reported, her wings processing the incoming data at visible speed. Moving to final query, the external influence behind the Council's activities. This search seemed to trigger a more immediate response from the engine. The data streams throughout the chamber suddenly accelerated, taking on a reddish hue that suggested heightened alert status. "We've hit security lockouts," Alara reported, her fingers moving frantically across the interface. "The engine is actively resisting this specific inquiry." Sora's voice carried new urgency from her position near the entrance. "Security constructs approach. Multiple signatures converging on our location." Issei made a swift decision. Alara, focus on breaking through those lockouts. Sora and I will handle the security response. He turned to the Shrine Maiden. Ready to put your balance keeper training to practical use. Sora nodded, her formal demeanor giving way to focused determination as she moved to a more defensive position. From within her robes, she produced several paper talismans inscribed with complex spiritual formulas, traditional Himahima sealing techniques adapted for this specific purpose. These won't stop them permanently, she cautioned. But they should disrupt the construct's energy patterns long enough for Alara to complete her work. The chamber entrance shimmered as the first security constructs arrived, crystal. In beings similar to those they had encountered earlier but larger and more complex in design. They moved with perfect coordination, immediately spreading out to surround the intruders. Unauthorized presence detected, they announced in perfect unison, their voices carrying harmonic overtones that resonated with the engine itself. Submit to containment protocols immediately. Instead of responding, Issei extended his convergent field in a controlled burst, creating localized distortions in the chamber's energy patterns. The effect momentarily confused the constructs, targeting systems, giving Sora the opening she needed. With practiced precision, the Shrine Maiden threw her talismans, each one attaching to a different security construct. The paper seals immediately activated, Spiritu. Al energy flowing through the intricate formulas to disrupt the crystalline being's coherence patterns. Containment breach in progress, the constructs announced, their synchronized movements becoming erratic as they fought against the sealing techniques. Escalating response authorized. More constructs began to appear, these with more aggressive configurations clearly designed for combat rather than standard security. Issei adjusted his strategy accordingly, shifting from defensive disruption to more direct countermeasures. Drawing on his unique convergent nature, he created localized void pockets around several of the advancing constructs, not destructive force, but the absence of defined space that temporarily removed them from the immediate reality frame. It wasn't destruction but displacement. Buying precious seconds for Alara to complete her work. Almost there, the researcher called out, her wings processing data at unprecedented speed as she fought through the engine's security protocols. The information exists, I can sense it just beyond these lockouts. Sora had exhausted her prepared talismans and now engaged the security constructs more directly, using her spirit UAL energy to create barriers that slowed their approach. Her balance keeper training proved surprisingly effective against the crystalline beings, her techniques specifically designed to counter supernatural energies of various types. The engine itself seemed to be responding to their intrusion more actively now, the entire chamber pulsing with warning patterns as additional security measures activated throughout the space. Data streams converged around Alara's interface terminal, attempting to sever her connection through sheer information overload. We're running out of time, Issei observed calmly, creating another void pocket to displace an advancing construct. Alara, we need to withdraw soon. Just a few more seconds. The researcher insisted, her silver eyes fixed on the terminal with fanatical intensity. I'm breaking through the final, she suddenly gasped, her wings flaring with shock as information flooded through them. There. Got it. The moment she disengaged from the terminal, the engine's response escalated dramatically. The chamber's entire structure began to reconfigure, walls of data closing in around them as the space itself attempted to contain the intruders. Exit strategy, now, Issei commanded, expanding his convergent field to create a buffer zone around their group. Alara produced the temporal catalyst once more, activating it with a precise energy pulse. Return transit initiating. Hold tight to me. The three pressed close together as Issei's convergent field enveloped them completely. The catalyst created a localized temporal distortion that interfaced with the engine's own temporal dynamics, essentially, borrowing its transit capabilities for their escape. The chamber around them blurred, reality itself seeming to fold inward as the transit effect took hold. Issei felt the engine's vast intelligence reaching for them even as they departed, its curiosity and alarm following them through the dimensional shift like an echo of awareness. The transition was rough and disorienting, none of the smooth precision of their inbound journey. They materialized not in the gate chamber they had departed from but in what appeared to be an emergency evacuation point several levels removed from their target location. Contingency exit, Alara explained breathlessly, her wings dimmed with exertion. The engine locked down our original transit path. But I had this backup programmed into the catalyst. Alarms blared throughout the surrounding complex, and the crystalline structures pulsed with alert patterns that suggested full security mobilization. Their presence was no longer a mystery to be investigated but a threat to be contained. "We need to leave Council space immediately," Sora urged, already scanning for potential escape routes. "Once they consolidate their forces, they'll lock down every dimensional exit point." Issei nodded in agreement, quickly assessing their options. "Alara, can your catalyst create one more transit portal? Back to your research facility." The researcher checked the crystalline sphere, which now showed visible fracture lines from the strain of their emergency escape. "One more transition at most, and not with precision. We could end up anywhere within 100 dimensional units of my facility." "That's a risk we'll have to take," Issei decided. "My mothers will find us regardless of where we emerge." As security forces converged on their position from multiple directions, Alara activated the temporal catalyst one final time. The damaged device pulsed erratically, creating a PORTAL that fluctuated unstably before them. "This won't hold long," she warned. "And I can't guarantee where it leads beyond, generally away from here." "Good enough," Issei replied, extending his C-Envergent field to stabilize the portal as much as possible. "Everyone through now." They leapt through the unstable portal just as the first wave of security constructs reached their position. The transition was violent and chaotic, reality fragmenting around them as the damaged catalyst struggled to maintain coherent dimensional coordinates. When they finally emerged, they found themselves in what appeared to be empty interstitial space, the non-reality that existed between defined dimensional planes. No solid ground, no atmosphere, nothing but endless void stretching in all directions. "Well," Alara observed dryly, her wings providing enough light to illuminate their immediate vicinity, "we're definitely outside Council space." Sora looked around with understandable concern. "Where exactly are we?" "Nowhere," Issei replied, recognizing the familiar emptiness. "This is the space between spaces, my mother's natural domain." As if summoned by his words, reality rippled around them. And Ophis materialized from the surrounding void. The Dragon of Infinity appeared unaffected by the recent conflict, her expression as impassive as ever. "You succeeded," she stated, not a question but a simple acknowledgement of fact. "We did," Issei confirmed. "Alara obtained the information we need, including the temporal coordinates to approach the prison." The Chaos Goddess appeared moments later, her form coalescing from swirling patterns of energy that hadn't been visible until they converged. Unlike Ophis, she showed signs of recent exertion, her normally fluid transitions between states slightly less smooth. Her manifestation requiring visible effort to maintain coherence. "The Council is in disarray," she reported with satisfaction. Their security forces scattered across 17 dimensional fronts, trying to contain manifestations that were never actually there. Her mercurial gaze shifted to Alara. "Did you find what you sought, scholar?" The researcher's silver eyes gleamed with complex emotions, triumph, vindication, and something darker that might have been fear. "Yes, I confirmed what I glimpsed 3,000 years ago. The Council serves a master far older and more dangerous than they realize." "And what entity would that be?" Issei asked, sensing they had uncovered something fundamental to understanding the true cosmic game being played. Alara's wings pulled tight against her back, a gesture of profound unease. "Not an entity as we understand the term. Something that exists outside the framework of ordered reality altogether. The engines records fair to it only is the regression, a force that seeks not chaos or destruction, but the unwinding of cosmic evolution itself. A return to primordial simplicity," the Chaos Goddess mused, her form fly shifting to abstract patterns before resolving back to humanoid appearance. "The negation of complexity and growth." "Precisely," Alara confirmed. "The Council believes they're preserving cosmic balance. But they're actually serving an agenda of universal regression, returning all existence to some theoretical, perfect state, where complexity and change no longer exist." The implications air staggering, suggesting that the Equilibrium Council's actions weren't merely misguided but serving a fundamentally anti-evolutionary purpose. Their containment of primordial forces, their rigid taxonomies of cosmic entities, their resistance to natural change, all serving this hidden agenda of regression. And the extraction technology, Issei prompted, refocusing on their immediate concern. Designed to accelerate the process. Alara explained, her wings displaying the data she had extracted from the engine. By weaponizing aspects of primordial chaos, they believe they can smooth out dimensional irregularities, essentially ironing reality back into a simpler state. Ophis absorbed this information with characteristic stillness. The second extraction, scheduled for implementation in less than 6 hours. Alara confirmed grimly. They've accelerated their timeline in response to recent events. Then we have very little time, Issei concluded. We need to reach my father's horizon before the second extraction begins. The Chaos Goddess smiled, the expression causing localized reality fluctuations around her mouth. With the temporal coordinates you've acquired, that becomes possible. But it won't be easy. The Council will have maximized security around the prison itself. When has anything worthwhile ever been easy? Issei replied with quiet confidence. He turned to Alara and Sora, studying them both with new appreciation. You've both risked everything to help me. What comes next will be even more dangerous. Sora straightened, her himahima dignity evident in her posture. The Balance Keepers have prepared for this moment for generations. I won't abandon my duty now. Alara's silver eyes gleamed with intellectual fire. The greatest scientific discovery in cosmic history is unfolding before me. Wild dragons couldn't drag me away. She paused, glancing at Ophis and the Chaos Goddess. No offense intended to present company, of course. Despite the gravity of their situation, Issei found himself smiling at the researcher's characteristic bluntness. In less than a day, he had gone from hidden exile to the center of cosmic events, accompanied by Ali's, whose courage and capability continued to impress him. As Ophis began creating a transit path toward their next destination, Issei took a moment to reflect on how dramatically his existence had changed since his convergence. The Son of Infinity and Chaos, created for a specific cosmic purpose that was only now becoming clear. Not merely to free his father or stop the Council, but potentially to reshape the very nature of cosmic evolution itself. The responsibility should have felt overwhelming, yet instead he experienced that same strange clarity of purpose he had noted earlier. This was why he existed. This was the convergence that truly mattered. Ready? He asked his companions as Ophis completed the transit preparations. Sora nodded firmly, her violet eyes meeting his with unwavering resolve. Alara's wings flared with anticipation, the mathematical formulas within them calculating new probabilities even now. Together, they stepped into the pathway Ophis had created, moving toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of multiple dimensional planes and perhaps the very nature of cosmic evolution itself. Whatever awaited them at Tiamat's prison, Issei knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 2 End Chapter 3, Noble Deceptions. Devil Society operates through layers of deception, Alara explained as they materialized on a windswept plateau overlooking a cityscape unlike anything in the human realm. What appears as straightforward hierarchy is actually an intricate web of alliances, blood pacts, and ancestral debts. The metropolis below them defied conventional architectural principles. Massive spires of obsidian and crimson crystal spiraled upward at impossible angles, connected by bridges that seemed to phase in and out of reality. The entire city existed within a massive cavern, yet the ceiling hundreds of miles overhead resembled a twilight sky, complete with unfamiliar constellations and 3 moons of varying sizes. Dis Civitas, Sora identified, her formal shrine maiden demeanor returning as she surveyed the Devil capital. The diplomatic archives describe it, but experiencing it firsthand is unsettling. Issei studied the city with analytical precision, noting the energy patterns flowing throughout its structure. Unlike human cities built through physical construction, this metropolis had been manifested through concentrated demonic will, its very existence a testament to the power of its creators. Where is Nadine Belial likely to be found? He asked, focusing on their objective. After their narrow escape from the Council's headquarters, they had regrouped at Alara's facility to analyze the extracted information. The temporal coordinates for approaching Tiamat's prison were complex, requiring precise calibration before implementation. While Ophis and the Chaos Goddess worked on these calculations, Alara had suggested a critical detour. According to the engine's records, she had explained, Certain aspects of the prison's internal configuration were designed by Devil artificers during the Sundering Wars. The Belial clan specialized in containment architectonics. If a NY1 understands the prison's vulnerabilities, it would be them. Now they found themselves on the outskirts of the Devil capital, preparing to navigate its treacherous political landscape in search of Nadine Belial, current head of a once great house that had fallen from prominence in recent centuries. The Crimson Spire, Alara indicated a twisted tower near the city center that pulsed with deep red energy. The Belial clan maintains their ancestral seat there, though their territorial holdings have diminished significantly since the Great War. How do we approach? Sora questioned. A Jew. Sting her attire with a flick of her wrist. The Himahima Shrine maiden garments shimmered and transformed into more appropriate clothing for Devil society, formal but understated, designed to avoid drawing unnecessary attention. The Balance Keepers rarely engage directly with Devil nobility. Alara's wings shifted configuration, the mathematical formulas within them recalculating as she considered the problem. Direct approach would be unwise. Nadine Belial is notoriously cautious. She'll have layers of security and misdirection surrounding her. What about the conclave? Issei suggested, recalling information from his mother's teachings. According to my studies, the Devil nobility gathers regularly for formal political assemblies where neutral ground is established by ancient compact. The Sanguine Conclave, Alara confirmed, her silver eyes widening slightly. It's actually scheduled for this evening, marking the 3000th anniversary of the Pact of Flames. She turned to Issei with newfound appreciation. How did you know about that? I've had 18 years to study supernatural political structures, he replied with a slight smile. My mother believed knowledge of all realms was essential to understanding my place within them. The conclave would provide cover for our presence, Sora acknowledged, but we would need proper invitations and established identities to gain entry. Leave that to me, Alara declared with surprising confidence. She reached into the dimensional pocket contained within her wings, extracting 3 small objects that resembled ornate wax seals. Artifacts from my less reputable research phase. These contain fabricated identities complete with historical lineage verification. Sora accepted one of the seals with visible skepticism. The Devils can detect most forgeries through blood resonance. These aren't forgeries, Alara corrected with academic precision. They're temporal echoes of actual identities that exist at different points in the Devil timeline. Not quite the same as stealing someone's identity, more like borrowing a quantum possibility of who they might have been. Issei examined his seal thoughtfully. And who will I be for this evening's performance? Lord Asmodai of House Phoenix, a distant cousin visiting from the Eastern Territories. Alara's wings displayed the fabricated background with impressive detail. Rarely seen in the capital, known for scholarly pursuits and rumored to possess unusual power from experimental magic. And us, Sora prompted. You'll be Lady Marahim of the Diploma. Tit Core, a position that explains your formal demeanor and knowledge of protocols. Alara tucked her own seal into the folds of her reconfiguring attire. I'll pose as Magister Nibis, a specialist in architectonic theory retained by House Phoenix. Our backgrounds will justify our interest in speaking with Nadine Belial about historical containment systems. Issei nodded approvingly. Plausible identities that explain our knowledge gaps while giving us legitimate reason to approach our target. Well conceived. As they prepared to descend toward the city, Issei extended his awareness outward, searching for any sign they had been followed or detected. The council would certainly have agents within Devil Society, and after their infiltration of the engine, maximum vigilance was essential. We should establish our approach strategy before entering the city proper, he advised. Devils respect power hierarchies above all else. Our interactions should reflect this while maintaining our cover. Agreed, Sora replied, her posture subtly shifting to match her diplomatic persona. You should present as the authority figure, with Alara and myself as valued advisors but clearly subordinate. The conclave begins at twilight, Alara noted, her wings reconfiguring into an elegant silver cloak that concealed their true nature. We should secure accommodations at the Obsidian Terminus for Saint. It's traditionally neutral ground where visitors can prepare without undue scrutiny. With their plan established, they began their descent toward the Devil metropolis. Rather than teleporting directly, which would trigger numerous detection wards, they utilized a more conventional approach path, a winding road of crystalline basalt that served as the main artery into the city. As they walked, the air around them grew increasingly dense with arcane energy, the concentrated power of countless devils going about their daily business. Issei maintained a carefully modulated convergent field around their group, not completely masking their presence but subtly altering how their energy signatures would be perceived by casual observers. Remember, he advised as they approached the city gates, we're not attempting to conceal ourselves entirely, that would draw more suspicion than it would deflect. We simply need to present as legitimate visitors with plausible reasons for our presence. The gates themselves were imposing constructions of living metal and crystallized blood, towering nearly 100 feet overhead. Guardian devils with multiple sets of wings and elaborate armor stood at attention, their eyes glowing with magical perception as they scrutinized all who sought entry. "Halt and declare," the lead guardian commanded as they approached, his voice resonating with supernatural authority. Issei stepped forward with calm confidence, presenting his seal with the practiced ease of nobility. "Lord Asmodai of House Phoenix, accompanied by my advisors. We seek accommodation at the Obsidian Terminus in preparation for this evening's conclave." The guardian took the seal, inspecting it with magical sight before returning it with a formal nod. "Your lineage is recognized, Lord Phoenix. What brings you from the Eastern Territories at this time?" "Scholarly interest primarily," Issei replied smoothly. "The anniversary of the Pact of Flames holds particular significance for those of us studying the architectural foundations of our society." It wasn't quite a lie. Their interest in containment architecture was genuine, if not for the reasons implied. The guardian seemed satisfied, turning his attention to Sora and Alara. "Your advisors' seals." They presented their fabricated identities with appropriate formality. After a brief inspection, the guardian stepped aside, gesturing toward the open gates. "Proceed to the terminus. The steward has been notified of your arrival and will arrange suitable accommodations." The guardian's final gaze lingered on Issei's, lightly longer than necessary, not with suspicion, but with a subtle reassessment of his importance. "Enjoy the conclave, my lord." As they passed through the gates, Sora whispered, he recognized real power beneath your disguise. Not specific enough to identify you, but enough to mark you as someone of significance. "Expected," Issei replied quietly. "My convergent nature isn't something that can be completely concealed, merely contextualized. So long as they attribute it to experimental magic as our cover suggests, it works to our advantage." The interior of Dis Civitas was even more impressive than its external appearance. Streets of polished obsidian wound between buildings of impossible geometry, populated by devils of every rank and classification. Lesser imps scurried on errands, while mid-ranking devils conducted business beneath floating platforms where higher nobility observed the city from comfortable elevation. The Obsidian Terminus rose before them, a sprawling complex assigned specifically to house visitors to the capital. Unlike the twisted spires surrounding it, the terminus presented a more conventional architectural appearance, its proportions deliberately set to accommodate guests from various realms. As they approached the entrance, a distinguished devil in formal attire materialized before them, bowing with practiced grace. "Lord Phoenix, welcome to Dis Civitas. I am Malvius, steward of the terminus. We've prepared the Azure Suite for your party, as befits your station." Issei acknowledged the greeting with appropriate aristocratic reserve. "Thank you, steward. We require privacy for preparation before the conclave. What time should we depart to ensure timely arrival?" "Conveyances will begin departing 2 hours before twilight, my lord. The and pavilion is some distance from the terminus." The steward gestured toward the interior. "If you'll follow me, I'll escort you to your accommodations personally." As they traversed the terminus's grand hallways, Issei noted the subtle security measures embedded throughout the structure, wards designed to monitor guests, alert systems to detect unauthorized magic, and various demonic familiars disguised as decorative elements. The Azure Suite proved to be an elegant collection of rooms draped in various shades of blue, unusual for devil aesthetics, which typically favored red and black. The symbolic meaning wasn't lost on Issei. They were being marked as outsiders, albeit important ones. Once the steward had departed and Alara had confirmed the rooms were free of surveillance magic, they gathered to refine their strategy. "The conclave will be heavily attended," Alara explained, her wings partially extending to display relevant information. Every major and minor house will have representatives present, creating excellent cover for our approach to Nadine Belial. What do we know about her current political position? Issei asked, studying the schematics of the grand pavilion that Alara projected. House Belial was once among the 72 pillars, Sora contributed, drawing on her diplomatic knowledge. They fell from prominence after backing the wrong faction during the Devil's Civil War. Nadine has spent the past century attempting to rebuild their political capital through strategic alliances and information brokering. She's known for three things, Alara added: encyclopedic knowledge of historical artifacts, ruthless political maneuvering, and never entering an arrangement without clear benefit to her house. Issei considered this information carefully. Then we need to offer something of significant value to secure her cooperation. What could we possibly offer that would interest a devil noble trying to restore her house's standing? Sora questioned. Information about the Equilibrium Council's activities, Issei replied confidently. Knowledge that something exists beyond the established supernatural hierarchy, something that even the council fears. For a house seeking to rebuild its position, such information represents leverage of inestimable value. Alara's silver eyes gleamed with approval. Calculated risk with substantial potential reward. Very devil-like thinking. I was raised by the embodiment of infinite calculation, Issei reminded her with a slight smile. Strategic thinking is literally in my blood. They spent the next hours preparing meticulously. Alara provided detailed briefings on current devil politics, ensuring they understood the complex web of alliances and rivalries that dominated the conclave. Sora focused on formal protocols, coaching Issei on the precise etiquette expected of devil nobility. For his part, Issei carefully modulated his convergent energy, creating the impression of significant magi. Cal power that would support his cover identity without revealing his true nature. When the appointed hour arrived, they made their way to the terminus's grand entrance, where ornate carriages drawn by nightmare steeds awaited to transport guests to the conclave. Their conveyance reflected their visiting status, impressive but not among the most elaborate, positioning them in the middle tier of the devil hierarchy. Remember, Issei advised as they departed, we're not trying to draw attention, merely to establish sufficient credibility to approach Nadine Belial without raising suspicion. He journeyed to the Grand Pavilion, took them through the heart of Dis Civitas, providing a sweeping view of devil society in all its complex glory. Unlike the chaotic hellscape of human mythology, the sea, Apedal displayed sophisticated organization and undeniable aesthetic vision, albeit one that embraced darkness and power as its foundational principles. It's beautiful in its way, Sora observed quietly, her violet eyes taking in the scenery. Terrible, but beautiful. Devils understand harmony through contrast, Alara explained. Their aesthetics celebrate the tension between order and chaos, dominance and submission, pain and pleasure. In that sense, they're more honest than many supposedly righteous realms. The Grand Pavilion emerged on the horizon, an enormous structure that dwarfed surrounding buildings. Unlike the sharp angles and twisted spires that characterized most devil architecture, the pavilion was a perfect hemisphere of crimson crystal, its surface inscribed with the history of devil civilization in intricate relief. Surrounding the main structure were 72 smaller pavilions, each representing one of the original pillars of devil society. As their carriage joined the procession approaching the main entrance, Issei observed the elaborate arrival ceremony. Each noble house was announced by title and lineage, their members proceeding inside according to strict hierarchical protocols. The atmosphere vibrated with subtle power plays, positioning, acknowledgements, and deliberate slights, all communicating the complex political landscape. When their turn came, a herald stepped forward to receive their identification seals. After a moment's inspection, he announced with practiced projection, Lord Asmodai of House Phoenix, Eastern Territories, accompani. D by Lady Merahim of the Diplomatic Corps and Magister Nibas, Architectonic Specialist. They proceeded inside with appropriate dignity, Issei leading with the confident bearing expected of devil nobility. The interior of the Grand Pavilion was a marvel of supernatural engineering, a space far larger than should have been possible given the structure's external dimensions. The domed ceiling soared hundreds of feet overhead, depicting animated scenes from devil history that shifted and changed as one watched. The floor was a single sheet of perfectly polished black stone that somehow remained warm to the touch despite its obsidian appearance. Throughout this vast space, representatives of every devil house mingled in carefully choreographed social patterns. The highest-ranking nobles occupied elevated platforms near the center, while lesser houses circulated around the perimeter. Servants moved silently among the guests, offering goblets of substances that ranged from conventional wine to glowing essences harvested from exotic realms. Nadine Belial is on the third tier, Alara murmured, her silver eyes scanning the gathering with methodical precision. Northwestern Quadrant, conversing with representatives of House Amducius. Issei followed her gaze to locate their target. Nadine Belial cut an impressive figure even among the elaborately attired devil nobility. Tall and statuesque, with platinum white hair styled in an intricate arrangement that defied gravity, she wore a gown of deepest crimson that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Her features were strict, rather than conventionally beautiful, sharp cheekbones, penetrating eyes of unusual violet hue, and lips painted the exact color of freshly spilled blood. Political discussion, Sora observed, adding the subtle cues of the interaction. House Amducius controls significant territory in the eastern reaches, likely seeking alliance with remaining Belial holdings in that region. We should allow the current negotiation to conclude before approaching, Issei decided. Meanwhile, establishing our presence among the General Assembly would be prudent. They moved through the gathering with calculated purpose, Issei occasionally engaging in brief conversations with minor nobles while Sora and Alara maintained their advisory roles. Each interaction served to reinforce their cover identities. Lord Asmodai expressing scholarly interest in architectural history, Lady Merahim demonstrating diplomatic finesse, and Magister Nibas offering technical insights on historical construction techniques. As they circulated, Issei noted subtle shifts in how they were perceived. Initial curiosity about visitors from the eastern territories gradually transformed into genuine interest, particularly regarding Issei's implied expertise in experimental magic. Several younger devils attempted to draw him into more detailed discussions, clearly hoping to assess whether House Phoenix had developed new magical techniques worth acquiring. Your reputation grows by the minute, Sora commented quietly as they momentarily separated from a particularly persistent group of minor nobles. I've counted 3 houses that have dispatched messengers to gather more information about Lord Asmodai since our arrival. Expected, Issei replied calmly. Devil society values 2 things above all else, power and information. Our presence suggests we possess both. Nadine has concluded her discussion with House Amducius, Alara reported, her wings slightly twitching beneath their disguise. She appears to be momentarily unengaged. Perfect timing, Issei noted. We'll approach under the pretense of scholarly interest in Belial containment architectonics. Alara, you should initiate the conversation as my specialist. It provides natural context for the inquiry. They moved smoothly toward the third tier where Nadine Belial stood observing the gathering with calculated detachment. As they approached, her attention shifted to them. Violet eyes narrowing slightly in assessment. Lady Belial, Alara began with formal precision, forgive our intrusion. I am Magister Nibas, architectonic specialist. In service to Lord Asmodai of House Phoenix. She gestured respectfully toward Issei. My lord has expressed particular interest in historical containment systems designed by your esteemed house during the Sundering Wars. Nadine's expression remained carefully neutral, though her gaze lingered on Issei with undisguised curiosity. House Belial's contributions to containment theory are well documented in the Central Archives, Magister. One wonders why you would seek direct consultation when such resources are readily available. The archives contain technical specifications, Issei replied, stepping forward with appropriate aristocratic confidence. I seek understanding beyond mere schematics, the philosophical principles that informed your ancestors' designs, particularly regarding entities that exist beyond conventional classification. Something flickered in Nadine's violet eyes, a brief but unmistakable spark of genuine interest breaking through her political mask. An unusual scholarly pursuit, Lord Phoenix. May I inquire as to your specific interest in such specialized applications? Theoretical exploration primarily, Issei answered smoothly. Though recent developments suggest these historical systems may have contemporary relevance. Recent developments, Nadine repeated, her tone perfectly balanced between casual curiosity and pointed inquiry. How intriguing. Perhaps we might discuss this in somewhat more private surroundings. The General Assembly is hardly conducive to technical discourse. She gestured toward one of the smaller alcoves that lined the pavilion's perimeter. Designed specifically for more discreet conversations. The invitation represented significant progress. Nadine Belial was known for her selective engagement at such gatherings. As they moved toward the indicated alcove, Issei sensed subtle magical surveillance activating around them, not hostile, but definitely attentive. Nadine was taking no chances with unexpected visitors expressing interest in her house's specialized knowledge. The alcove itself proved to be a masterpiece of magical engineering. Once they stepped inside, ambient noise from the main gathering faded to near silence. And a privacy barrier of considerable sophistication shimmered into existence behind them. Your security measures are impressive, Lady Belial, Issei observed, deliberately letting a track of his convergent energy interact with the barrier to assess its capabilities. Necessary precautions, she replied with a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. Information is currency in our society, Lord Phoenix. Now, perhaps you might dispense with pretense and explain your actual interest in Belial containment architectonics. The direct challenge might have unsettled lesser infiltrators. But Issei had anticipated this response. Devil nobility didn't achieve their positions through naivety. Perceptive and efficient, he acknowledged with genuine approval. Very well, my interest concerns specific applications of Belial containment theory as implemented by the Equilibrium Council approximately 3,000 years ago. Nadine's perfect composure faltered momentarily, a barely perceptible widening of her violet eyes. The Council doesn't share its implementation details with anyone, including the original architects. Whatever you're seeking, the primordial containment protocols, Issei interrupted smoothly. Specifically, the primary containment structure housing the masculine aspect of Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon. The temperature in the alcove seemed to drop 7 degrees as Nadine reassessed her visitors with new intensity. Her gaze shifted between them, lingering longest on Issei. You are not who you claim to be, she stated finally, her voice low and dangerous. House Phoenix has no eastern branch with experimental magical interests, and the diplomatic corps employs no one named Merahim. Rather than denying her accusation, Issei allowed a measured portion of his convergent power to become visible, manifesting as subtle distortions in the air around him. Correct on all counts, Lady Belial. Our identities are fabricated, but our interest in you, our knowledge is genuine, and considerably more urgent than you realize. Who are you? She demanded, magical energy gathering around her hands in preparation for either attack or defense. Someone offering an exchange, Issei replied calmly. Information that could restore House Belial to prominence, in return for your insights regarding vulnerabilities in the Council's containment system. The naked ambition that flashed across Nadine's features was swiftly controlled, but not before Issei had noted its intensity. House Belial's reduced status clearly rankled its current head far more than her public composure suggested. What information could possibly carry such value? She asked, skepticism evident though her defensive posture relaxed marginally. Knowledge that the Equilibrium NCIL serves an entity beyond their own understanding, Issei stated simply. An entity that threatens all supernatural realms, including Devil Society. For several heartbeats, Nadine remained perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Then, with deliberate precision, she deactivated the magical energy around her hands. You have 5 minutes to convince me this isn't elaborate misdirection, she declared, conjuring an ornate timepiece that materialized in the air beside her. After which, I will summon security and have you removed for falsifying your identities at a formal gathering, a serious breach of protocol. Issei nodded to Alara, who stepped forward, her disguised wings shifting slightly as she prepared to present the evidence they had extracted from the Akashic Synchronicity engine. Before she could begin, however, a commotion erupted in the main gathering, raised voices and flaring magical energies disrupting the carefully maintained decorum of the conclave. Interruption, Sora murmured, moving to the alcove's entrance to assess the disturbance. Security forces entering the pavilion in significant numbers. Nadine frowned, clearly irritated by the disruption. Unusual. The conclave operates under strict non-interference protocols. When Sora turned back to them, her expression was grave. Council representatives. They appear to be searching for someone. The Implication was clear. Their infiltration of the engine had been traced more quickly than anticipated, and the Council had dispatched agents to Devil territory despite the political complications such action would create. They're here for us, Issei concluded calmly. The question becomes whether this development strengthens or weakens our negotiating position with Lady Belial. Nadine's violet eyes narrowed as she reassessed the situation with lightning calculation. Council representatives violating conclave neutrality suggests your information may indeed be valuable. She deactivated the timepiece with a dismissive gesture. However, being associated with fugitives from the Council brings considerable risk to my house. Or considerable opportunity, Issei countered. Depending on what you do with the information we provide. A considering smile curved Nadine's crimson lips. Continue to intrigue me, false Lord Phoenix. With efficient precision, Alara presented a condensed verse. Ion of what they had discovered within the Akashic Synchronicity Engine, the entity known only as the regression, the Council's true purpose in containing primordial forces, and the catastrophic extraction plan currently underway. As the explanation progressed, Nadine's expression transformed from skeptical assessment to focused intensity. By the conclusion, she was leaning forward slightly, all pretense of aristocratic disinterest abandoned. If this is accurate, she stated, each word precisely weighted, it represents a fundamental restructuring of supernatural politics. It's worse than mere politics. Issei replied gravely. The Council's extraction activities threaten the stability of all connected realms. The second extraction is scheduled for implementation within hours. In's gaze fixed on him with new appraisal. You still haven't explained who you actually are, or why you're personally involved in opposing the Council. Before Issei could decide how much to reveal, the disturbance outside the alcove intensified. Through the privacy barrier, they could see Council representatives in their distinctive crystalline armor methodically moving through the gathering, inspecting each group of attendees. Our time grows short, Sora observed tensely. They're conducting systematic search patterns through the assembly. Nadine made a swift decision, activating a hidden mechanism within the alcove wall. A section of the floor silently receded, revealing a descending staircase. Decision time. Enter my private transit system and continue our discussion elsewhere. Or remain and face Council interrogation. The offer represented a significant shift in Nadine's position, from suspicious assessment to active assistance, albeit likely motivated by self-interest rather than altruism. Issei exchanged brief glances with Sora and Alara, receiving subtle nods of agreement. Lead on, Lady Belial, he replied. We accept your hospitality. With practiced efficiency, Nadine guided them down the concealed staircase. Once they had all descended, the floor above them closed seamlessly, leaving no evidence of their escape route. The passage below was illuminated by floating orbs of crimson light that activated as they proceeded. House Belial maintains private transit networks throughout Dis Civitas, Nadine explained as they moved swiftly through the underground corridor. A necessary precaution given our complicated political position. Where are we going? Sora inquired, maintaining alert vigilance despite their apparent escape. My private residence within the Crimson Spire. Nadine replied. It contains adequate security measures to prevent detection while we complete our negotiation. The transit system proved impressively extensive, with multiple junctions and alternative routes suggesting regular use and careful maintenance. Nadine navigated with confident familiarity, occasionally activating specific sequences of magical seals to open new passages or redirect security measures. After approximately 20 minutes of travel through the underground network, they ascended a different staircase that opened into an elegantly appointed chamber. Unlike the ostentatious display common to Devil nobility, this room featured understated luxury, quality evident in materials and craftsmanship rather than excessive ornamentation. My private study, Nadine informed them, activating a sequence of security measures that caused the walls to briefly shimmer with protective magic. We can speak freely here without concern for surveillance. Once the security protocols were complete, she turned to face them directly, all political pretense set aside. Now, perhaps the truth. Starting with who you actually are and what you hope to accomplish by sharing this information with me specifically. Issei considered his options carefully. Complete disclosure carried obvious risks, but Nadine Belial had demonstrated both pragmatism and discretion by extracting them from the conclave. Moreover, Securing her cooperation likely required a measure of genuine trust. My name is Issei Hyodo, he began, allowing his convergent energy to manifest more visibly around him. I am the son of Ophis, the dragon of infinity, and Tiamat, the chaos karma dragon. My existence represents the convergence of primordial forces that the council has long sought to keep separate. Nadine's perfect composure finally shattered completely, her violet eyes widening in genuine shock. Impossible, she whispered. The offspring of two primordial entities old create catastrophic dimensional instability. Such a being couldn't exist without. She stopped abruptly, reassessing the energy patterns now visible around Issei. Unless the convergence was somehow stabilized. Recently completed, Issei confirmed, which is why the council is now pursuing us with unprecedented resources. They fear what my existence represents, a direct challenge to their fundamental approach to cosmic equilibrium. Nadine's gaze shifted to Sora and Alara. And your companions, Sora Himahima, balance keeper of the Himahima clan, Issei introduced. And Alara Valahad, formerly of the Seventh Heaven, now independent researcher of primordial energies. The exile, Nadine identified Alara with newfound respect. Your theoretical work on trans-dimensional containment NT theory circulates among devil scholars, though few understand its implications. Her attention returned to Issei. You claim Tiamat as your father, yet all records indicate the Chaos Karma Dragon was destroyed millennia ago. Not destroyed, Issei corrected. Imprisoned by the council using containment systems partially designed by your ancestors. The masculine aspect of Tiamat remains within that prison, while the feminine aspect has continued to exist independently. Understanding dawned in Nadine's expression. And now the council is attempting to extract and weaponize chaotic energy from the imprisoned aspect, threatening dimensional stability in the process. She paced thoughtfully, aristocratic training evident in her graceful movements despite her evident agitation. You seek to prevent this extraction by identifying vulnerabilities in the containment system designed by my ancestors. Precisely, Issei confirmed. The council accelerated their timeline when they detected my completed convergence. The second extraction will occur within hours unless we can reach the prison and interfere with their process. Nadine stopped her pacing, studying Issei with calculated assessment. What you're suggesting would position House Belial in direct opposition to the Equilibrium Council, an entity even the biblical God treats with cautious respect. The political consequences would be significant, as would be the consequences of dimensional collapse, Alara interjected dryly. Which is the inevitable result if the council completes all 7 extractions. Assuming your information is accurate, Nadine countered, though without real conviction. She turned back to Issei, her violet eyes narrowed in thought. You mentioned information that could restore House Belial to prominence. Elaborate knowledge of what truly controls the council, Issei replied. The entity they serve without fully understanding, the regression. Armed with this information, House Belial could position itself as having critical intelligence regarding the greatest threat facing all supernatural realms. More importantly, he continued, by assisting in preventing dimensional collapse. Your house would be directly responsible for preserving Devil's society itself. The political capital generated by such an accomplishment would be substantial. Nadine laughed suddenly, a sound genuine amusement rather than political affect. You speak the language of devil politics with impressive fluency for the offspring of primordial dragons. She studied him with newfound appreciation. Perhaps there's more human in your composition than is immediately apparent. My education was comprehensive, Issei replied with a slight smile. Understanding political motivation across different supernatural hierarchies was considered essential knowledge. Indeed, Nadine moved to an ornate cabinet across the room, retrieving an ancient-looking scroll case made of some unidentifiable metal. It seems we have mutual interests. Issei Hyodo, House Belial possesses certain, restricted knowledge regarding the containment system's design. She placed the case on a central table, activating a complex sequence of magical unlocking mechanisms. My ancestors were not fools. When commissioned to design aspects of the primordial containment system, they included subtle vulnerabilities known only to the Belial bloodline, insurance against potential betrayal by the council. The case opened to reveal scrolls of unusual composition, not paper or parchment, but some crystalline material. that shifted and flowed like liquid while maintaining cohesive form. Conceptual schematics, Alara identified with academic excitement, moving closer to examine the artifacts. Dimensional blueprint, TS that exists simultaneously as information and reality. The only complete record of the containment system's true configuration, Nadine confirmed. The Council received modified versions that omitted certain structural contingencies. She unrolled the primary scroll across the table, revealing incredibly complex geometric patterns that shifted and reconfigured as they watched. To ordinary perception, the patterns would appear as meaningless, constantly changing symbols. But to those with enhanced supernatural senses, they represented a perfect mathematical model of the prison's actual construction. The containment operates through 17 concurrent dimensional bindings, Nadine explained, pointing to specific configurations within the pattern. Each binding establishes parameters that restrict different aspects of primordial chaotic energy. However, the Belial design incorporated a conceptual backdoor, a sequential vulnerability that activates only when specific energy natures are applied in precise combination. Alara leaned closer, her silver eyes widening as she recognized the implications. It's a harmonic convergence key, she breathed, requiring both infinite and chaotic energy applied simultaneously in perfect counterbalance. A safeguard my ancestors could never actually utilize, Nadine added with ironic appreciation. Since accessing both primordia, energy types simultaneously would typically cause dimensional rupture. Until now, Issei observed quietly. Until you, Nadine confirmed, studying him with newfound intensity. A being embodying both infinity and chaos in stable convergence, precisely what would be required to activate the system's hidden vulnerabilities. Sora, who had been examining the schematics with careful attention, looked up with sudden concern. These vulnerability points correspond exactly with where the Council has placed their extraction arrays. Of course they do, Alara realized, her wings twitching beneath their disguise. The Council didn't accidentally discover viable extraction points, they were deliberately targeting the system's structural vulnerabilities. Which suggests they possess information they shouldn't have. Nadine concluded grimly. Someone betrayed House Belial's secrets to the Council, perhaps generations ago, setting the stage for current events. The implications created new complications. If the Council was already targeting the containment system's vulnerability points, their approach needed to be reconsidered. Simply attempting to exploit these same vulnerabilities play directly into whatever strategy the Council was implementing. We need to understand their extraction process more precisely, Issei decided, studying the schematics intently. Not just where they're extracting energy, but how they're processing it afterward. Nadine nodded in agreement. The scrolls contain theoretical models for energy extraction, though my ancestors never intended them to be implemented. According to these designs, extracted primordial energy would require specialized containment vessels calibrated to the specific frequencies being harvested. The engine records mentioned crystalline matrices. Alara contributed, her wings displaying the relevant data she had extracted. 17 faceted structures composed of compressed dimensional boundaries. That matches Belial theoretical models, Nadine confirmed, indicating specific notations within the scrolls. However, safe extraction would require gradual energy transfer over centuries, not the accelerated timeline the Council is implementing. Which explains why dimensional instability is already manifesting after just one extraction, Sora observed. They're prioritizing speed over safety. As they continued analyzing the schematics, Issei sensed a subtle shift in the security fields surrounding Nadine's private residence. Someone or something was testing the protective barriers, not attacking directly, but methodically probing for weaknesses. We have company, he stated calmly, extending his awareness to identify the intruders. Council representatives, approximately 12 in number, attempting to bypass your security measures. Quote, Nadine frowned, moving swiftly to a monitoring crystal embedded in the wall. Confirmed. They've tracked us from the conclave more quickly than anticipated. Her expression hardened with aristocratic displeasure. Violating a devil noble's private residence violates 17 different treaties. The Council must be truly desperate. Or truly confident, Alara countered grimly. If they believe dimensional collapse is imminent without their intervention, diplomatic niceties become irrelevant. How long will your security hold? Issei asked, already calculating potential escape routes. Against standard forces, indefinitely, Nadine replied. Against council specialists with anti-dimensional equipment, perhaps 30 minutes. Sufficient me to complete our analysis and formulate an approach strategy, Issei decided. Alara, focus on identifying how we might counteract the extraction process rather than simply preventing it. Sora, use your balance keeper training to identify potential stabilization points within the containment system. As they worked, Nadine observed Issei with growing curiosity. You command with remarkable natural authority for someone so young. She noted. Your companions, both considerably older and accomplished in their own rights, defer to you without hesitation. Age is relative when dealing with cosmic principles. Issei replied without looking up from the schematics. My dual heritage provides perspective that transcends conventional experience. Indeed. Nadine moved closer, her voice lowering slightly. And what perspective does that heritage offer regarding House Belial's assistance in your endeavor? What guarantee do I have that my house will receive appropriate recognition if we succeed? The question was quintessentially devil, pragmatic self-interest masked as reasonable negotiation. Issei appreciated her directness, it simplified their interaction considerably. No guarantee exists in a situation of this magnitude. He answered honestly. But I can offer House Belial something potentially more valuable than mere recognition, a foundation position in whatever new equilibrium emerges from these events. Nadine's violet eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Elaborate. The current supernatural hierarchy is built on artificial constraints imposed by the Council, Issei explained, straightening to face her directly. When those constraints are removed or reorganized, new power structures will inevitably emerge. Those positioned with critical knowledge during the transition will naturally assume leadership roles. The implication was clear. By aligning with Issei's group now, House Belial could secure preferential position in whatever new order followed successful intervention at the prison. A compelling proposition, Nadine acknowledged after a moment's consideration. Though predicated on significant assumptions about our success, all worthwhile ventures involve calculated risk, Issei replied with a slight smile. Something devil nobility understands better than most. Their exchange was interrupted as the security barriers around the residence fluctuated noticeably. The Council's forces had escalated their approach from probing to active assault. They're employing dimensional resonance disruptors, Alara identified, recognizing the specific energy pattern. Designed to create harmonic interference in protection fields. We should accelerate our departure timeline, Sora suggested, gathering the analyzed schematics with efficient precision. Nadi. Nay moved to a different section of the chamber, activating a concealed mechanism that caused a portion of the floor to reconfigure. My private transit system connects to an emergency evacuation point outside the city boundaries. We can depart through. Her explanation was cut short as the entire residence shuddered violently. The security barriers visible through the chamber's windows flared bright blue before partially collapsing, allowing glimpses of the Council forces positioned outside. That shouldn't be possible, Nadine stated, genuine alarm breaking through her aristocratic composure. Those barriers are anchored to fundamental devil territory principles. The Council is employing primordial disruption technology, Alara realized, her wings displaying analytical calculations beneath their disguise. They're using principles derived from their extraction research, essentially weaponizing the very instability they claim to be preventing. The implications were disturbing. Suggesting the Council was willing to implement potentially dangerous technology without fully understanding its consequences, simply to capture Issei and his companions. We need a more direct approach, Issei decided, his convergent energy visibly manifesting around him as he prepared for confrontation. Attempting to flee will only delay the inevitable while potentially endangering additional devil civilians. What are you suggesting? Sora asked, though her expression suggested she already anticipated his answer. Controlled confrontation, he replied calmly. On terms we establish rather than reacting to their assault timeline. Nadine studied him with new appraisal. You propose to directly engage Council forces rather than evade them. Bold strategy, though potentially catastrophic within devil territory. Not engagement. Negotiation from position of strength, Issei clarified. They want me specifically. The rest of you are secondary objectives. By presenting myself while ensuring your safety. I create leverage while minimizing collateral damage. Absolutely not. Alara objected immediately, her wings flaring beneath their disguise. Your convergent nature is literally the only thing that might counteract the extraction process. Surrendering to the council negates our entire purpose. Who said anything about surrendering? Issei replied with quiet confidence. I'm suggesting a temporary tactical repositioning that serves multiple purposes simultaneously. He turned to Nadine. Does your residence include formal receiving areas suitable for diplomatic confrontation? Understanding dawned in the Devil Noble's expression. The Crimson Audience Chamber, traditionally used for formal negotiations during times of political tension. It includes ancient non-agar Eshin wards that even the council would hesitate to violate directly. Perfect. Issei nodded decisively. While I engage the council representatives there, the rest of you will depart through Ni's evacuation system with the containment schematics. Our planned rendezvous point remains unchanged. This is unnecessarily dangerous, Sora argued, concern evident beneath her formal demeanor. Quote, the council won't risk losing you now that they've tracked us this far. They'll employ whatever means necessary to ensure your capture. Precisely why this approach will succeed, Issei countered confidently. Their determination to secure me will override rational assessment. They'll commit fully to my apparent capture, creating optimal conditions for your undetected departure. He turned to Alara. The temporal coordinates for approaching the prison, you've completed the necessary calculations. The researcher nodded reluctantly. Yes, though implementation will be challenging without you. Our convergent energy to stabilize the approach vector. My mothers will meet you at the rendezvous point, Issei reminded her. Their combined power, while less elegantly balanced than my convergent nature, will prove sufficient for implementation. Despite their continued objections, Issei's calm certainty eventually prevailed. With reluctant efficiency, they prepared for split deployment, Alara, Sora, and Nadine gathering the critical schematics and analysis for transport through the evacuation system, while Issei prepared to confront the council representatives in the formal audience chamber. I still think this is strategically unsound, Alara muttered as she secured the crystalline scrolls within her dimensional storage. The risks significantly outweigh potential advantages. Our assessment would be correct if capture were the actual outcome, Issei replied with subtle amusement. Trust that I have no intention of remaining in council custody beyond the time necessary for your successful departure. Before they separated, Sora approached Issei directly, her violet eyes meeting his with unusual intensity. Don't take unnecessary risks, she advised, formal demeanor momentarily set aside. Your convergent nature is still stabilizing, pushing its limits prematurely could have unpredictable consequences. The genuine concern in her voice carried emotional weight beyond tactical consideration. Issei acknowledged this with a slight nod, responding to both the spoken and unspoken aspects of her warning. I'll exercise appropriate caution, he promised. Focus on reaching the rendezvous point safely. The schematics you carry are ultimately more important than any individual, including me. Nadine, observing this exchange with careful attention, added her own assessment. The council representatives will expect deception, its standard procedure in devil negotiations. Their suspicion will actually work in your favor if you present exactly what they anticipate. Parent cooperation masking hidden purpose. Playing to expectations while subverting them, Issei agreed with appreciation for her insight. A principal devil society has elevated to an art form. With final preparations complete, they moved to implement their divided strategy. Nadine guided Alara and Sora toward the concealed evacuation route, while providing Issei with directions to the Crimson Audience Chamber. The traditional approach involves formal announcement and established diplomatic protocols, she explained. Under normal circumstances, you would be introduced by House retainers with appropriate ceremonial language. And under current circumstances, Issei inquired with a raised eyebrow. Nadine's crimson lips curved in a subtle smile. Under current circumstances, dramatic entrance serves our purposes better than procedural correctness. The northeastern archway provides the most impressive approach, use it. As they prepared to separate, Nadine hesitated momentarily, studying Issei with curious intensity. You are not what I expected from the offspring of primordial entities, she observed. There's something almost elegant in your approach to chaos. Bala. NCE through integration rather than opposition, Issei replied simply. The fundamental principle my existence represents. With that philosophical exchange concluded, they proceeded to their respective assignments. Issei moved through the elaborate corridors of the Crimson Spire alone, his convergent energy carefully modulated to project confident power without destructive overflow. The Crimson Audience Chamber proved appropriately impressive, a massive circular space with soaring ceilings and walls composed of translucent crystal that glowed with deep red internal light. The floor featured an elaborate mosaic depicting ancient devil history, while 17 pillars of black stone supported the domed ceiling overhead. At the chamber's center stood a raised dais with formal seating arrangement clearly designed for diplomatic negotiations. Already present were approximately 20 council representatives in their distinctive crystalline armor, arranged in defensive formation around the chamber's main entrance. Their leader, a tall figure wearing more elaborate armor with additional crystalline components, stood at the center, clearly expecting Issei's arrival through the main doors. Instead, following Nadine's suggestion, Issei entered through the northeastern archway, his convergent energy manifesting visibly around him as he stepped confidently into the chamber. The effect W. As precisely as intended, the council forces momentarily disoriented by his unexpected approach vector and impressive energy display. Representatives of the Equilibrium Council, he addressed them formally, his voice carrying effortlessly throughout the space. Your violation of Devil territorial sovereignty suggests matters of unusual urgency. I have chosen to address your concerns directly rather than prolonging potentially destructive pursuit. The leader stepped forward, crystalline helmet reconfiguring to reveal a humanoid face of perfect symmetrical features, the standardized appearance adopted by high-ranking council officials when dealing with other supernatural factions. Convergent entity Issei Hyodo, offspring of primordial designates Ophis and Tiamat, the representative responded in formally modulated tones. Your interference with council operations constitutes violation of 17 different equilibrium protocols. You will surrender immediately for containment and processing. Interesting proposition, Issei replied calmly, ascending the steps to the central dais. However, diplomatic convention within Devil territory requires formal negotiation rather than demands. The ancient wards of this chamber enforce such conventions. Surely the council respects established supernatural compacts. The representative's perfect features showed momentary uncertainty. He council prided itself on procedural correctness, and violating recognized diplomatic protocols would damage their reputation across multiple supernatural factions. Limited negotiation parameters may be established. The representative conceded with visible reluctance. State your terms for voluntary surrender. Issei smiled slightly, taking the formal seat at the center of the dais, a positio N traditionally reserved for the highest-ranking participant in Devil diplomatic exchanges. The symbolic power move was not lost on the council representatives, several of whom shifted uncomfortably at this assertion of authority. First, confirmation regarding your extraction timeline, Issei began, his tone conversational despite the tension permeating the chamber. The second extraction from Tiamat's prison is scheduled for implementation within how many hours precisely? The representative hesitated, clearly assessing the strategic implications of providing this information. That data is classified under council security protocols, yet pertinent to negotiation parameters, Issei countered smoothly. If dimensional stability is truly the council's primary concern, transparency regarding timelines serves mutual interests. Quote, the logic was impeccable, placing the representative in the difficult position of either acknowledging their timeline or implicitly admitting alternative motivations. The second extraction is scheduled for implementation in approximately 4 hours, the representative finally conceded. Dimensional integrity assessments require sequential stabilization between procedures. Thank you for that confirmation, Issei replied with appropriate formality. Second inquiry. The council's relationship with the entity designated as the regression. Would you care to elaborate on that connection? The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The representative physically recoiled as if struck, while the surrounding council forces shifted into heightened alert postures. The chamber's temperature seemed to drop perceptibly as crystalline armor components vibrated with what appeared to be automated alarm responses. That designation is unknown in council taxonomy, the representative stated. Those subtle harmonic disruptions in their voice betrayed the falsehood. Your access to the Akashic Synchronicity engine has resulted in corrupted data interpretation. Interesting response. Issei observed calmly. Would you prefer to rephrase before we continue negotiations? The representative's perfect features hardened into mask-like rigidity. Further discussion is unproductive. You will surrender for processing immediately, or we will employ necessary force despite diplomatic conventions. Exactly as Issei had anticipated, mention of the regress ion had triggered protocol shifts that overrode diplomatic considerations. The Council's reaction confirmed the significance of what they had discovered within the engine, while simultaneously creating the precise conditions Issei needed for the next phase of his strategy. Most disappointing, he replied, his convergent energy beginning to manifest more prominently around him. I had hoped for or substantive exchange before resorting to alternative measures. The representative signaled the surrounding forces, who immediately moved to implement containment formation. Crystalline weapons powered up with distinctive harmonic resonance, specifically calibrated to counter primordial energy signatures. Convergent entity Issei Hyodo, you will submit to containment, the representative commanded with increased authority. Resistance will result in application of suppression protocols. Issei rose from the formal seat, his expression calm despite the threatening array of weapons now directed toward him. One final question, if you would indulge me. Do Council representatives receive comprehensive briefings on the unique properties of convergent energy manifestation? The non sequitur caused momentary confusion, giving Issei the opening he needed. With precise control, he channeled his convergent energy into a specific configuration, not an attack or defensive measure, but a complex dimensional fold that he had been carefully preparing throughout their exchange. The effect was visually subtle but functionally dramatic. Reality within the chamber briefly doubled, creating perfect symmetrical overlay that lasted less than a second. To ordinary perception, it would appear as merely a momentary visual distortion. But at the quantum level, it created a precise duplication of Issei's energy signature, simultaneously present in two overlapping states. As reality reintegrated, Issei remained standing on the dais, apparently unchanged. The Council representatives, detecting no obvious attack, maintained their containment formation while looking somewhat confused by the lack of resistance. A wise decision, the leader stated, misinterpreting Issei's actions as surrender. You will be transported to Council headquarters for processing and integration into the equilibrium framework. Of course, Issei agreed with perfect composure. Though I should mention one small detail before we proceed. What detail? The representative demanded, suspicion evident in their tone. Issei smiled slightly. The individual you're about to transport isn't actually me, merely a convergent energy construct with temporary conscious imprinting. But it should provide sufficiently interesting data for your research division. As comprehension dawned in the representative's expression, Issei's form began to shimmer with increasing transparency. The dimensional fold he had created had allowed him to project a perfect energy duplicate while simultaneously phasing his actual LF into an adjacent dimensional pocket, a technique he had developed through careful study of his mother Ophus's void manipulation abilities. Containment breach, the representative shouted as Issei's projected duplicate began to dissipate. Implement dimensional lock protocols immediately. But their response came too late. Issei's actual form had already transitioned completely into the adjacent dimensional pocket, beyond the reach of standard Council containment measures. From this position of relative safety, he watched as the Council forces frantically attempted to track his dimensional signature, their coordination devolving into chaotic search patterns. Meanwhile, across the Crimson Spire, Alara, Sora, and Nadine would have successfully evacuated through the emergency transit SYS-10. Their departure completely undetected amid the Council's single-minded focus on capturing Issei. The diversionary strategy had worked perfectly. Now he simply needed to extract himself and rejoin his companions at the designated rendezvous point. Extending his awareness through the dimensional boundaries, Issei located a suitable exit vector several miles outside the Devil capital, far enough from the current Council deployment to allow safe emergence. As he prepared to transition, he reflected on the information confirmed during the confrontation. The Council's accelerated timeline meant they now had less than 4 hours to reach Tiamat's prison before the second extraction began. Moreover, Their extreme reaction to mention of the regression confirmed the entity's significance in ways more definitive than even the engine's records had suggested. The cosmic game was approaching a critical juncture, the Council implementing increasingly desperate measures, primordial forces converging after millennia of separation, and dimensional boundaries weakening across multiple planes of existence. At the center of this convergence stood Issei himself, the physical embodiment of forces that had previously existed only in opposition to one another. With this sobering awareness, he completed his dimensional transition, emerging several miles beyond the boundaries of Dis Civitas. The Devil capital was visible in the distance, emergency magical signals indicating significant security activity throughout the metropolis. The Council would eventually realize their quarry had completely escaped their grasp, but by then, Issei would be far beyond their reach. Extending his convergent senses outward, he detected the unique energy signatures of his companions, already at the designated rendezvous point and awaiting his arrival. With newfound confidence in his abilities, Issei created a direct transit vector, shifting himself through the dimensional boundaries with precision that would have been impossible before his convergence. He materialized at the rendezvous location, a neutral pocket dimension Alara had established for secure coordination. Already present were Sora, Alara, and Nadine, along with his mother's Ophis and the Chaos Goddess. Their expressions registered varying degrees of relief and irritation at his arrival. Successful implementation of the diversion strategy, he reported calmly. The Council confirmed second extraction in approximately 4 hours, with significant reaction to mention of the regression. Reckless, Ophis stated flatly, though without her usual emotional detachment. Unnecessary risk, but effective, the Chaos Goddess countered with amused approval. Creative application of convergent principles. Very much my son. Alara Aproa, Ched with barely contained scientific excitement. The dimensional folding technique you employed, was that spontaneous development or pre-planned implementation? The applications for quantum duplication alone are revolutionary. Perhaps we might focus on the critical timeline first, Sora suggested with practical emphasis. 4 hours until the second extraction leaves minimal margin for preparation. Nadine, who had been quietly assessing the primordial entities with aristocratic composure, finally spoke. The schematics have been fully analyzed. We've identified the optimal approach vector R for the prison based on the Belial containment vulnerabilities. She turned to Issei with new respect evident in her violet eyes. Your performance in the audience chamber was impressive. Few beings could maintain such composed strategic implementation while surrounded by council forces. Balance through integration, Issei replied simply, echoing his earlier statement. Now, let's review our approach strategy. We have minimal time remaining before the Council's actions threaten multiple dimensional planes. As the group gathered to finalize their plan for reaching Tiamat's prison, Issei noticed subtle shifts in how each of his companions related to him. Sora's formal demeanor now contained undercurrents of personal concern beneath her practical focus. Alara's scientific fascination had evolved into something closer to admiration for his creative application of theoretical principles. And Nadine, initially motivated purely by political calculation, now displayed genuine intel. Actual engagement with the cosmic implications of their undertaking. 3 remarkable women with distinct perspectives and abilities, united by the unprecedented challenge they faced together. Whatever came next at Tiamat's prison would test them all to their limits, and potentially reshape the very foundations of supernatural existence across all connected realms. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.